Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast's Big 12 Conference Preview. If you are watching or listening to this, you are, by definition, brilliant. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Barton, and as usual, with our guy Steponaduck. Gentlemen, good to see you two. I'm looking forward to getting to the Big 12, just get the niceties and the house cleaning out of the way. If you're watching this and you are so compelled to want to have a copy of this conference preview in PDF form or any conference preview, just reach out to me. You can either leave your email address in the YouTube comments or reach out to me on Twitter, also known as X, at BuckMetrics. Hit me up and I will grant you access to the folder with all the PDFs. This is our glossary. This basically explains all the terminology that we use throughout this preview, other previews, and throughout the regular season and postseason. With that, here's our Big 12 overview. New head coaches at UCF and West Virginia, of different quality head coaches, I might add, editorially. Significant drop from the top tier of QB talent in this conference. Let me grab my laser pointer here, if I will. You can see basically there's a good handful of quarterbacks in this conference returning this year, and after that it really drops off. So there's a case of a have and have-nots here in terms of quarterbacking in the Big 12 conference. This was an underrated defensive conference last year. I didn't have them as good as the Big 10 or the SEC, but it was much better than I expected when I ran the numbers. And you can see a lot of green here. A lot of green in basically, especially in terms of run defenses, and a lot of green in returning metrics. So that's what stands out to me in terms of the Big 12. Just first glance at the overview. Robert, anything stand out to you here?
Yeah, I actually think it's not a particularly difficult argument to make that the Big 12 was better than the ACC last year. Definitely a far more balanced conference. Unfortunately, with the current system, the playoffs, that doesn't help you. Actually, having a balanced conference hurts you because it means that the winner doesn't have as many wins. So therefore, you have what happened with SMU and Clemson versus just Arizona State getting in, as opposed to one of the other teams that I think probably would have done a better job against Clemson and or better than Clemson / SMU potentially, right? I don't think BYU would have gone out as easily as Clemson or even SMU, right? But that's unfortunately not how the system works. No, it was a good conference. The problem is that I think from top to down, I think you have some issues in terms of just there's no elite program. There's a lot of ones that are good. I think you're going to see it this year. Some of the ones that were good last year are going to rotate out. Some of the ones that were bad last year are going to rotate back in. And we'll talk about that more later. But the absence of a truly elite one or two teams is stopping this conference from getting multiple playoff bids.
Yeah, sad. Duck, first thoughts on the Big 12 overview?
Similar. I think you've got about 5 teams that are really serious contenders for the Big 12 this upcoming 2025 season. They're all probably B-plus caliber teams. I don't think you have as much talent as the SEC or the Big 10, but you do have some strong teams at the top. And then you've got 4 or 5 of the kind of middle contenders that'll certainly be fighting for a bowl game, but I don't think will be serious challengers to win the Big 12. And I think it's going to be a league where you'll get a lot of carnage this season. These teams usually will beat, well, this year anyway, will beat each other up. And I think that you're looking at multiple losses from the conference champions. So it'll be real interesting to see how those losses affect these teams throughout the season and who beats who and who ends up jockeying into the Big 12 championship game, which by my estimation, it'll come down to tiebreakers yet again, because I think we'll see a ton of 7-2 teams in league play.
You're on mute there.
Sorry. Agreeing to both your guys' points, because we're all numbers guys here, but the thing that sticks out to me is there's got to be some kind of numeric way to crunch this, just to say take the total value of the annual media rights for each conference's football games and divide it by the dispersion of wins across the conference. That's got to be something that really informs that discussion, because if you had it more top heavy, I think you would see maybe another bid there. So good points by both of y'all, better than what I made. My laser pointer. There we go. Okay. We're going to start first with the Baylor Bears here. We are going in Phil Steele order, as is usual, but not always. Second season for Jake Spavital, the ace of the OC. Did a really good job with this offense last year. Excuse me. This is the only offense that was green, meaning significantly above average last year in run offense and pass efficiency. and Ryan, so passing explosivity, in 2024. So you had just a huge turnaround. Just a really good job by Spavital here. Sawyer Robertson did not end the season in our top 10 Apex, but he was on discussion for a few weeks when we would go over our weekly top 10 Apex quarterbacks. So another just evidence of the job that Spavital did here. What really concerns me about Baylor is there's a concern and a half. It's a one-sided team. That's one concern. Maybe the bigger concern is it's not on the coach's side of the ball. Let's go back to Aranda and just being an absolute monster defensive coordinator at Wisconsin, and then even more so at LSU. And we haven't really seen that for a sustained period here at Baylor. And I think we're we've got 5 years he's been there now. In just the last 3 years, the defensive rating in the last 3 years, the best one is 2.7. You know what? That's what USC was, and I don't think anybody who aspires to be USC's defense of 2024. I think Phil's a little above the market here, clearly. The market's got Baylor at 7.5 wins with the under taking some money, which makes sense. I think that's slightly undervalued. I like the offense a lot. The defense is going to be okay, but longer term, I don't see this team really contending for the title based on it being one-sided. That really goes away from the coach's side of the ball. I know I get a little specific in that argument here. Duck, are you going to talk me off of that ledge?
Not specifically. I think that the offense really does look loaded and ready to go, though, in the second year of the Spavital system. I think what they bring back is really something that they can build on offensively, and really this offense should be electric. We'll see them run at a fast tempo. They're going to run the ball and try to be a little bit balanced, and that's what Baylor does. But the receiver room looks electric. I think when you look at guys like Cole Wilson, Kobe Prentice that come in from Alabama, Lewis Brown is a good receiver. Sawyer Robertson just gets another year in the system. Running back room looks strong. I think the offense is going to be elite by Big 12 standards. I think the defense just hasn't quite turned the corner yet, and it, like you had alluded to with Dave Aranda, it's just stunning that this defense could be as bad as it's been in situational football and directly cost this team some games last season. But we did see the offense directly turn the corner after they handed the reins to Robertson during the Air Force game last year in 2024. What really would have me just pausing with Baylor is I think the schedule is really tricky. You've got a tough non-conference with Auburn and SMU in the non-conference. Arizona State comes in, Kansas State, Utah. I mean, there's plenty of games that are losable. Now, they do get what would be considered the bottom four in Big 12 play with Arizona, Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. So there are certainly winnable conference games and an opportunity for this team if they've taken that step defensively to contend for the Big 12 crown. But I don't know. I think that there's probably some better value in my opinion. I would pass on the win total. I could see 8-4 certainly is probably the most likely in my opinion, but certainly some games and some early season tests with Baylor. I think we'll know right away if they have the sort of intestinal fortitude needed to make a deep run this season, and you'll know it in the first 4 games. So interested to see how that plays out for Baylor.
Fair to say. Robert, I just accidentally referred to this, and maybe I'm going to frame the question this way to throw the Bears to you. I look at this profile, and I actually see USC. Would USC contend for the Big 12 title this year?
If they were in the Big 12, yeah. It's not like that's a pretty strong Apex. Like, that's a pretty good offense. I think they are going to be pretty offensive heavy. Week 1 against Auburn, that's huge. Auburn, not the greatest SEC team. Can you take the fight to them? Can you win that game? If you win that game, you're instantly going to be one of the favorites for the conference. I do like this team. I just don't know if they're going to win the Big 12 again. The Big 12, and as is going to be a common theme throughout all this, among maybe 6 or so teams, anyone can win any game. And that's going to just come down to coaching. Who's the better coach? I don't think Aranda is the best coach in the Big 12. He's a good coach. Maybe his team is just better than everybody else's team. But I think there's other coaches I would probably rather take in that case. This is a good team. I see over 7.5 here, especially if they can get past Auburn. Because once you get past Auburn, the rest of the schedule here, not that bad. Okay, you've got Utah and you've got SMU. But, you've got Arizona, you've got TCU, Houston, Like TCU might be pretty good, but I'm only really seeing 3 losses here, right? Like I think an 8-4 is very possible. I very easily can get an 8-4 here. So I like them over. I just don't know if they could win the conference.
Want to point out too that Auburn game is on Friday. What a great way to kick off your weekend of week 1. My gosh, love it. Going to be a good one to watch. All right, Phil has Utah number 2 here in the conference. Not sure if I agree with that, but I can definitely see the argument. You've got the new QB, Devin Dampier, who tore up the Mountain West. He brings along with him, or whoever brought who. I don't know who's the passenger, who's the luggage here, but Jason Beck, OC from that New Mexico team, comes as well. They added a lot of Ryan here in 571, although it was 6 players, so it's not like there's anyone that really is crushing it here. Excuse me. This defense I'd been down on for a couple of years. They did come back last year to be more of a classic Whittingham defense, I think even more. You've got a good showing last year, and you've got a lot of returning starts and a big improvement metric. So there's a really good... I can see the case either way. I've got a quarterback that can scare you, and I've got a defense that can scare you. At the same time, if I am a fan in Rice Eccles, I'm scared if my quarterback has to throw the ball here because he just didn't do so well. In 82 Apex in the Mountain West, I'm a little worried about how that translates to the Big 12. I've got a lot of mixed signals here, cross currents, if you will. I like this week 1 game at UCLA. That'll be interesting. I'm still torn on UCLA as well. I want to say that they were surprisingly functional last year, and now they might be a little bit overblown because of all the stuff that comes with Nico, so I'm not sure what that is. That's going to be one of the games I'm definitely watching in week 1. Total of 7.5 seems okay. The over's taken a lot of money. I think that's a lot of Devin Dampier's team. I'm not laying that much with just such a big question about the quarterback's ability to throw the ball. Now, maybe that is only a deciding factor in a few games and I'm overthinking that, but I'm not going to lay that much just to find out why. Duck, am I being too hard on Devin Dampier and the possible downside here?
I think that you've got a couple of things at play. Obviously, the electric play of Devon Dampier really put New Mexico in position numerous times to be competitive last year, and he was really the only reason. He was playing in front of or behind a bottom 10 offensive line in FBS last season. They only surrendered 5 sacks, but it would have been 55 sacks had anyone else been back there. It was just so sad to watch him having to run around and scramble for his life, and he still was able to dazzle. I think when you put him behind an offensive line that is competent and grades out well and has plenty of beef in order to be able to provide some pass protection, I think you'll see a little bit more confident passer. He also was playing from behind a ton, and so at some point during a game, you've just got to try to make something happen, and if you have to force a throw, you have to force a throw, and we saw that with him at New Mexico last year. They're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They're going to run the ball a lot. We're going to see Wayshawn Parker, who comes in from Washington State, get plenty of carries. Barry Rogers from New Mexico as well will split carries with him. And then Dampier's going to add a run element that is going to be unique to the Utah offense as well. So I think this running game is really going to carry the offense this season. You've got a loaded tight end room with about 3 or 4 capable pass receivers and people who can help out in the run game. So I'm not worried about the offense one bit for Utah. Last year we saw them struggle time in and time out. They were down to about their 3rd option at quarterback and they couldn't complete a pass. And really that was what handcuffed Utah last season. I think this year we'll see more explosivity in the run game. They'll be ahead of the chains. They'll be in more favorable situations where they can possess and sustain the ball. And defensively, this group looks ready to go at all 3 levels. They look really solid along the defensive line and at linebacker, and I think the pass coverage units will be better than even what they were last year, and they were pretty decent last year as well. I'd say 3rd in Phil Steele's metrics. So I think you've got a really strong football team here, and really Dampier and his electric play and his playmaking ability really will allow Utah to take a stride. I think the schedule is favorable as well as we see the non-conference. UCLA will be a test early, but obviously that market has seen a lot of Utah steam over the summer. And then the trickiest conference games are at home. And so you host Texas Tech, you host Arizona State, you host Kansas State. I don't think any of the road games are unwinnable by any stretch. And I think we've seen with the market and what Utah was mispriced at earlier in the summer to win the league, and people hit that pretty hard, myself included. At 6-1 now, yeah, maybe not, but when it was 14, 15, 16-1, I definitely played Utah to win the conference. I've got this bunch at 9-3 or better. I think this is absolutely a team that'll be in the conference championship game. I think the schedule is very favorable for Utah. They look really shored up in the trenches. I think we'll see a lot of wow factor this year from Utah.
You make fair points, especially on the schedule is a great point. I will push back on the tight end room a little bit and say if that group doesn't have the annual USC voucher to present for a free 150-yard game, it might not be the same. I don't know. Just had to say that as a USC guy who's been lit up by those tight ends for years and years and turned Dalton Kincaid single-handedly into an NFL player. Yeah, Robert, your thoughts? Am I being too? I'm still skeptical of Devin Dampier, but he makes a good point about all right. He had nobody to throw to, and he was never basically able to set his feet. I didn't convince Duck. Am I convincing you?
Yeah, you're not really convincing me either. I'm a believer in this Utah team. I think I saw this early in the postseason. I grabbed it at something ridiculous like 18-1 or 14 or something like that, and I'm sitting happy with that number now. I think the whole Cam Rising thing, they were waiting for him for so long. They put all their eggs in one basket there, and that just blew up repeatedly for 2 straight seasons. And I think now that you actually have a quarterback and you actually have you'll have hopefully some stability in the position, and there's no way they've just gambled everything on Devin Dampier. They clearly are going to have backups by now. They're clearly going to say, fine, we at least have someone backing us up. Also, this could be Kyle Whittingham's final season, right? There's talk that he was going to go potentially last season, and I think he's looking for one last shot here. And I think that if he wins the Big 12 and gets to a playoff game and maybe wins that playoff game or not, kind of think he'd be pretty happy with that as a going away gift there. So honestly, I think this team will improve from last year. I think having a quarterback, I know Devin Dampier's apex technically there on paper is an 82, but again, that was a New Mexico State team that had a win total of I think 1.5. I don't know. It was 1.5. I think. Yeah, it was no expectations for that team at all. The fact that it was even a remotely fun team and they were competitive in a lot of games, and like how many games did we see it where? Because again, New Mexico is in the Mountain West, and they routinely play games at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So we saw a lot of those games. They're functionally the only game on for a lot of that time. How many times did we see them as like a 14-point dog, 17-point underdog, and they're down 7 in the fourth quarter, and he's just like, all right, got to make something happen. And he throws an interception or something. That dings up your apex. But when you're in that position where it's like, hey, we weren't even supposed to be competitive in this game anyway, go ahead, throw it. And okay, yeah, it didn't work out for you. It's going to hurt your apex, but you tried, right? You did something. You are not going to need to do that. You're going to have an amazing ground game, which he will probably participate in because he was actually a relatively mobile quarterback. I actually think he will be a pretty fun player to watch here. I think he will be really fun for Utah, and I think the ability that before he would be like, okay, I need to throw for 30 yards on this play. Now it's cool. 5 yards down the field to a completely wide open wide receiver who's taller than the DB, right? That's what you get now at Utah. You're not having to throw 40 yards down the field into double coverage hoping to get a first down, right? Like, it's a completely different system. I think he'll do a lot better in this area.
All right. Noted, you guys are both putting the pressure on Devin Dampier. I'm trying to be a little kind to the young man, but I guess we're not all that so generous. Shocking for a Canadian to be that mean to him, but okay, we'll see. Let's go to the next team here. Iowa State Cyclones. I always default from a position of wanting to love this team. I'm a big Matt Campbell fan, have been since he basically proved that he was the actual head coach that made things work at Toledo, not Tim Beckman, way back when. First problem is this team had significant good luck last year. The second thing is along the same lines. I had them power rated 9th in the conference, and they made the conference title game. So things just broke right for them in terms of the variance of their ups and downs and inefficiencies. They're one of 7 teams in the conference that were not green, means statistically above average in offense or defense. Rocco Beck took a step back last year, apex of 113 to 100, and yet they made the conference title game, which I called, and I'm thinking like I got lucky more than anything else. The defense took a step back from a 6.2 to a 3.8. Now they had a higher improvement metric here, so that really shocked. Now, according to Phil, there were some linebacker injuries that probably were a cause of that. I'm also wondering that a linebacker coach went to, I believe, Cincinnati. just keep an eye on that. The DC, I believe his name is John Heacock, is very highly thought of here. Let's just see how the defense plays out this year. Season win total is 7.5. I don't think the bottom falls out from underneath here, but I think that they definitely take a step back from last year. Just some signs that don't encourage. I'm not going to play it. I just think it's fairly valued. I don't see anything compelling enough to go over or under here. Duck, are you surprised how these numbers show out in terms of like the luck, and this team wasn't as good as at first glance seem on paper?
You have 3 games you probably won that you shouldn't have won, including the Iowa game, which you really had no business winning, and really took a strong, from the midway of the third quarter on, was theirs, but they were down big in that one. You could make a case that they didn't play very well against Central Florida. You could make a case that they didn't play very well against Utah, and they ended up winning those games anyway. So they were probably deserving of 8 wins instead of what they actually ended up with. And then down significantly in the bowl game before Cam Ward sat out the second half. So that's how that one went. So they lose significant pieces on defense. You have guys that are like Darlin Porter, who was drafted in the NFL at defensive back, and Malik Verdon, who also was drafted. You lose guys along the defensive line that transferred out and guys that transferred to the SEC. It's just hard to replace that, and they didn't really replace it in the portal. Their portal churn was not overly great. I think offensively, I mean, you kind of saw some flashes of brilliance from Rocco Becht. He was at times a magician back there, but now you've got 2,000-yard receivers that are gone in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, and those are pieces that Iowa State has not had before. They didn't have those sort of playmakers on the outside. I know they backfilled with Chase Soule, who's a great receiver from ECU, and I think he'll soften the blow, as will possibly Xavier Townsend. But I don't know. It's probably more run game, more slower pace, more ride Carson Hansen a little bit more. I don't know.
Classic Matt Campbell.
Classic Matt Campbell. I think defensively, they're not going to be garbage. I think they'll take a little bit of a step back, probably. The luck factor will probably even out. There's so much competitiveness with these teams at the top. Again, there's 5 or 6 that are all within 3 points in my power ratings, and you've got a great situation where they have BYU come to town immediately after the Holy War, so they catch them in a favorable spot. Road trips at Oklahoma State, at Colorado, and at Cincinnati are definitely winnable. Arizona State comes in. The schedule is a little bit more favorable than many of the other teams, just based on the scheduling lotto and the unbalanced schedule, because there's 16 teams in this league. But probably a little bit of regression due, I'm guessing, for Iowa State this season would just be a natural expectation based on the amount of fortune that they found themselves with last year. Again, I don't think it's a team that's going to be garbage, but what this does do is it's going to put the pressure on the Cyclones immediately to have to win the opener in Dublin across the pond when they play Farmington against Kansas State. And then they've got to double back for FCS University of South Dakota, and I'm here to tell you, they're a top 4 FCS team. It's just like playing North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State. You've got to bring it, or that team's going to show up and punch you in the mouth. So then you've got Iowa in the Cy-Hawk Trophy game. There's 3 really competitive games. We're going to find out a lot about Iowa State before the halfway mark of September.
You left out, there's always a Butch Jones to come along and just make things better for the opponent, though.
Yep, we'll likely see that.
Yeah. Also got to note that Campbell at times has struggled in that FCS game. It wouldn't be unusual, just say that. Robert, last year I felt like I was screaming into the void about, hey, Rocco Becht is actually a good quarterback, and now I'm like trying to unzig my zag, if you will, and say, all right, folks, I don't think he's as good as y'all think. He actually regressed last season by my metrics. I feel dumb and lucky. I guess I got dumb luck last year. What's your take on the Cyclones this year versus last?
Yeah, I think I like them. I think they were power rated 9th, and I think the result in the Big 12 title game showed that. But at the same time, it didn't feel like this was the 9th best team in the Big 12. I think they got a little lucky to get into the championship game. They needed a BYU to lose. I think they needed Colorado to lose as well. There was just a bunch of chaos with that. So They got a little lucky even getting to the championship game, but this team took down Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, right? Yeah, it was the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So that's not nothing. Miami doesn't really play defense, but they scored a lot of points. They stopped Miami from scoring more points than they did, so that's something. I think this team is not bad. I think I take them over Kansas State. Phil Steele has them over Kansas State. I take them over Kansas State too. I am going to be, and again, we're recording this. We are very close to that Iowa State versus Kansas State game. That's basically a bit over a week away. I'm just circling that. I'm getting ready. We're getting snacks set up at noon on Saturday. I'm excited for that. It's my noon, not your noon. It's your 9 a.m., but that's okay. But no, I'm excited for that. Again, I think they should be able to beat Kansas State. I'm hopeful. If they don't, then yeah, okay, this team is one of the top. This team doesn't have a chance to win the conference. But like, Rocco back progressed a little bit. They had maybe a slightly tougher schedule. The Big 12 is just a better defensive conference, so I don't know. But he's definitely not a bad quarterback. The Big 12 is not necessarily the quarterback conference, but of those quarterbacks, he's not bad. I think he's good. I think they play good defense. I'm excited to see what they can do this year, sorry. But yeah, I think Kansas State game, that's going to be a huge game in determining what this team does going forward.
I heard a really bad joke that when Farmageddon goes to Iron, it's the potato Famageddon. All right. Bad taste, but no, that'll be a good one. That's probably one of the more attractive week 0 games. Now, I wonder if it'll have the kind of weird shine that really falls off 4 weeks in when one of those teams has one win and needs Butch Jones to save their season. But anyways, okay, guess what, guys? Here's a team that's going to win the conference because they are the most well-balanced and they were not a fluke last year. Just avert your eyes from that luck number, okay? Let's pretend that didn't happen. Third season now under Kenny Dillingham. My gosh, let's not just forget just how bad they were before he came on board. The defense in 2 years went from a rating of negative 9.4 to positive 9. The offense did. The defense from negative 1.6 to 8.5. This is, especially for a conference like the Big 12, these are big numbers right here. They have the top returning quarterback in the Big 12. Aside from being one of the best offenses last year, they have the highest improvement metric from last year on the offensive line. So they should be, in theory, better on the offensive line. They're 12th in the whole nation in 2025 Ryan. Let's not forget that Jordan Tyson didn't play in that game where they scared the life out of Texas in the first round of the playoffs, or it was the second round, pardon me. But they scared the life out of Texas, and they didn't have Jordan Tyson. Now he comes back. They lose Cam Scatabo. They do get Kanye Udo from Army. Is Scatabo, is he singular in his skill set? Sure. Is he irreplaceable? No. With this offensive line and quarterback around him, especially double no. Defensively, they were 14th in the nation in run offense in the whole country. They have the top improvement metric. There we go. This one right here. This improvement metric on defense, it is the top in all of FBS. They return the second highest number of starts in all of FBS. Now, the bad news, the really bad news is Iowa State, Utah, and Baylor, they all catch on the road. We have talked about all those teams already. So that's not a good sign in that at least Phil Steele thinks that those teams are better than Arizona State here, or will finish better. Still, I think that this is the elite Big 12 team. They are the best, most well-balanced team. 8.5 and the under is taking money. Are you kidding me? I think they are undervalued, possibly bettably. I know I get carried away when I fall in preseason love with a team like this. Duck, this is where you come in and throw some cold water on me and just tell me to sober up.
No, I'll crack open another one for you and hand it to you so you can keep going. I don't see a lot of detractor factors here with me with Arizona State. I'm concerned about the loss of Scatabo just because he was the heart and soul of that offense at times.
Yeah.
He took the offense on his back. He was able to do so much. He had so much elusiveness to him with making people miss and catching the ball out of the backfield, and he was just such a jack of all trades. But Kanye Udo will at least soften the blow. He was such an explosive power back out of Army, and he'll do really good things behind this offensive line. Kyson Brown will provide a little bit of pop too. So I think running back is shored up. We'll see Sam Levitt just take another step, and that'll make them even more dangerous. The receiver room looks loaded. They've got Jalen Moss, who comes in from Fresno. They've got Jaron Hamilton, who comes in from Alabama, who didn't get a lot of snaps there, but was still a highly rated recruit out of high school. You got a guy from Clemson who comes in. This skill room is really ready to go. Now, the offensive line looks solid on paper, but it's a hodgepodge. You've got a lot of guys that are in and out from JUCO and from G5 ranks. So we'll see how they put it all together. But I think if it comes together, then offensively, this team could be lights out. They've got a really robust home field advantage, too. It's hard to go to the desert when it's 108 degrees and win and try to play football out. And a lot of their games are at night, so maybe it's slightly mitigated. But just year over year, routinely, it's hard to go to Tempe and win. They get some of those tougher teams at home with TCU coming in, with Texas Tech coming in. But it is a loaded schedule because there's those 3 road games that are going to be tough. Say what you want, but that roadie in week 2 against Mississippi State is going to be no gimme. I don't think Mississippi State's going to be great by SEC standards, but that'll be no gimme on the road there. I'm led to believe this team will be one that's in contention again, but it's not going to take much. It's not going to take much. You lose at Baylor, and then you come back and throw up a stinker against TCU, and then you lose to Utah on the road, and now you're out of it. It doesn't take much for somebody to find themselves out of this race in a highly contested race with so many teams at the top. But it doesn't take much to separate yourself either. If they can, those first 4 conference games are where this season will be won or lost for Arizona State this season. They play 4 right out of the chute, and you'll know immediately after that where this team's going to be. So I think defensively they're locked in. I think that they're ready to go at all 3 levels. I really don't have very many concerns because of the amount of talent that the talent level that they return. So defensively, teams are going to be up against it when they have to line up against Arizona State. I would imagine that the pressures are there. The sacks remain strong. They were really good in the red zone last season. I would anticipate that continues. Creating havoc and creating pressure should be something that this team can hang their hat on. At times we saw some explosivity surrendered in the pass department where they gave up some explosives, but I don't know, maybe that gets better with another year in the system too.
Everybody has that at time to time, unless you're basically Texas or Ohio State.
Yeah.
And you make a great point about the schedule. If they can just make it through that first chunk, these last 5 games are pretty generous, aside from Iowa State. Robert, I'm just thinking, if I see all green for last year and all green for this year on the defense, this would not be a fun team for opposing offenses to face, right?
No, this will be a very good team. 100%. Arizona State is going to be a very good team. My only concern is, and again, I love Kenny Dillingham as a head coach. We liked him last year. We said last year, we're like, hey, the 3-9 from the year, we liked him as a hire, and then many times through the 3-9 season, we said, hey, he's doing things. This is good. We talked about him a lot week to week. We said, hey, this was really smart. They did this. It didn't work out, but it was really smart how he did this coaching thing. And then last year was that breakout year. You get this amazing run, win the Big 12, then you get a bye for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but then you get to, you play Texas there, and then you almost take down Texas. It takes an interception in double overtime to lose to Texas. And what an amazing season for basically not second season, obviously massive rebuild of the program, but second season in, to be able to accomplish that is insane. Just what an amazing run. I think he's a great coach. The thing is, though, is that there is obviously a bit of luck with that. There's a lot of they got lucky. They needed certain things to break their way. They probably needed Colorado to lose and BYU to lose as well to get in the conference championship. Now, again, luck is what you make it. Again, obviously, he put themselves in position to win those games. That worked. It happens, right? And again, this team was very good throughout the entire season, pretty much. But at the same point in time, it's just this conference is just so even those games that they won, with the exception of Iowa State for some reason, they had quite a few games that were very competitive. And that's not to say that it's bad, but it's to say that they weren't head and shoulders above everybody else. They won the conference 100%, and that's not. But the conference is so close between those 6 teams. And I just think that there's a certain component of luck to it, and I just don't know if they're going to get that lucky again this year. They do lose Cam Scatabo. They do keep Sam Levitt, who was good last year, but not amazing. He was good, but not amazing. I think he needs to be a bit more amazing this year to do that. But again, we'll have to see. I think this team is definitely competitive. And if you told me Arizona State won the Big 12, I would not be surprised. I just don't know if they would be my pick in terms of value to win it again.
You make a good point, and I forgot about this. You might remember, like, when there's about 4 weeks left in the season, and they were having the playoff predictor, and it was kind of like tee-hee-ha. Arizona State was, like, in the graphic, although less than 1%. And not to make this a philosophical discussion about what is life, but I would say that they weren't lucky to win those last few games because they were just a really good team. But sometimes good luck is the absence of bad luck. And I think that's what you're saying. It's like they stayed healthy. They didn't lose a Scatterbo. They did lose Tyson, but they had already just wrapped things up at that point. And they did get not on-field luck, but also just like you said, things had to fall a very specific way for them to get into the title game. If they had that really dumb loss against Cincinnati, which, boy, I don't know. How much do you think they wanted to replay that one?
The quarterback was hurt when they went there.
Fair. But it's not like the quarterback was hurt at Kansas State or something. This is Cincinnati, who, all respect to Scott Satterfield, that's a tough one to swallow. As someone who's adopted the Sun Devils since I spent so much time in Scottsdale and rival Tempe, but good to see them. Okay, that's enough about the Wildcats. Here's the token service academy of the Big 12. A lot of times I don't know what to do with this team because it's such a specific program. Matt Wells, somehow he improved this offense by 10 points once Colin Klein left. I did not see that coming. Again, but that's just what comes with the territory here. About maybe once every 5 or 6 years you can see a really good Kansas State year coming. But a lot of the times it's just like a service academy. It's, where'd that come from? If I'm just looking at this team's prospects, I'm just wondering about Avery Johnson's ceiling. Is 94 horrible for a first-year starter? No. Does he have upside from that? Sure. Is his upside enough to win a conference title? I don't know. I would say on a usual team, no. In a system that's this specific, is it good enough? Maybe. So I'm on my second bullet point, I've thrown like 5 cross currents here. This 91 defensive apex, it's not like I look at it and say that sucks, but again, is that good enough to be contending for the conference title? In a vacuum, if that was the only weakness? No, but it's another question here. Season total is 8.5. The under's taking a little bit of money. I can't argue with it. Again, there's other places where I am a lot more informed than just take a guess in Manhattan. Duck, you're really good at this. When I'm just drawing blanks, you are really good about filling in some of the blank spaces. So I've given you a lot of blank spaces here to fill in on the Wildcats.
Yeah, it's a team that was pretty close last year to really having a breakthrough. They got whipped by BYU, but they had several turnovers early and got way down early in that game, snowballed, and then Houston got them. They were on the road at Houston, and Houston got them. And it was just one of those things where I think the team was really good at times, and at times they were really bad. You saw this entire unit run for 6.1 yards per carry as a team over the course of the entire season, but at times they couldn't convert that yardage into points as they had to settle for 11 red zone field goals and had 6 empty possessions. You had that. You couldn't convert on third down at times as they only converted about 41%. You had the pass game was just middling. It was no real wow factor, but yet it was somewhat efficient. The offensive line, I think, could overperform this year, which would make Kansas State stronger during situational football. Down around the goal line, 3rd and short, 4th and short. They might have some advantages this year. They lose some pieces defensively, so it'll be hard to see how that looks when you go through all 3 levels of the defense and look at the guys that they lost either to the NFL draft or to graduation. But you have a DB 2 DBs that are drafted. You've got a linebacker that graduates. You've got a couple guys on the D-line that are gone now. And so there's some experience lost where maybe those spots lead for the next man up to come in. They didn't really do a tremendous amount in the portal for my estimations. It was okay, some of the guys that they got, but didn't really address the defensive line as much as I would have liked to see. They did get Gabe Powers, who comes in from Ohio State. Didn't really play a lot there. I think with Kansas State, too, my opinion is I would lean under 8.5 because the schedule is very difficult, in my opinion. You have all your conference games. You have Arizona on the road in a non-conference bout that was pre-scheduled before Arizona joined the league. So they're squaring off against Arizona in a non-league sanctioned game. You got Army that comes to town, and you start your season across the pond. So there's just a lot schedule-wise that I'm not tremendously interested in. I go up and down the lineup here, and Iowa State is losable. I don't think Army is losable, but it's just another thing you have to prepare for in your slate, which is difficult. And then, oh, by the way, you come off Army and you go to Arizona on short rest. Just difficult. You've got Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Utah all on the schedule. It's just something that just seems can add up for this team over the course of the season when you have to have these tougher games week in and week out. I'm not sold on Avery Johnson as a passer quite yet, and if he can really grasp and have firm, these games are never firmly in hand with him at the helm, and that's just one of those things that I need to see more of this year before I can start to buy it. So no value in the conference as the way that they're priced. There's better plays out there, and with the tough schedule, I'd lean under. Even though I think this is a pretty good football team, I'd lean under 8.5. I think 8-4 is a lot more likely than assuming 9-3 here.
Yeah, you really more elegantly put my questions in. There's not one thing where I'm like, this is why this team is going to be bad. It's a lot of questions about, I just don't know about A, B, C. And if two of those are just not there, you don't know. But you know what? It's not like a lot of sports bettors get rich betting against Chris Kleiman at the same time. As you were going through that, I thought about this just based on the last two teams we've talked about. I'm wondering if, and there can be more than one team, but I'm wondering if Arizona State, with how they recruit versus retain, I wonder if Arizona State gets the belt of the Big 12 developmental program. Kenny Dillingham said I want to keep guys, recruiting in the secondary. And that's kind of Kansas State's thing about developing, and I think that Arizona State might have passed him. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a very fair assessment. I think you can't understate the job that he's done there. Something funny about Arizona State, I've heard it said this way: it's the easiest place to recruit to, it's the hardest place to keep him eligible.
Oh my gosh, yes. And if you've ever spent an evening in Old Town Scottsdale on a Thursday night when the buses are coming up and it's off season for football, there's a lot of trouble to get into. I'll just say that. I wouldn't have made it from Arizona State. I wouldn't have graduated. I can just tell you that right now. Robert, if you have Phil Steele up,
yes,
I want to throw it to you on the Wildcats on this. What was their best win last season? I think maybe that's another way to start this in terms of another question mark.
At Colorado? Maybe?
Question mark?
Tulane.
Yeah, there's maybe.
Yeah.
It's one of those two. I think you can make argument Colorado is better than Tulane, but
yep.
Okay, that's not.
And that was before Colorado got hot too, so that wasn't like peak Colorado.
No,
yeah,
at Houston,
it probably was their best win and I love John Summerall, but good point. Probably a G5 win.
Yeah, I mean, at Houston loss, Arizona State loss. They beat Cincinnati, but that's not particularly impressive. And at Iowa State loss, and at BYU loss too, right? Like, it's okay. You beat up on West Virginia and Kansas, but you actually barely beat Kansas, so that's not even that. It's weird, right? I think he's been there for a while. I think Kansas State does have limitations into what they actually can do. I don't love Avery Johnson. I think he was okay, but I think he was doing the best he could fill in for Will Howard, and it just wasn't enough. I think he was good but not great, and it's probably not a coincidence that Will Howard goes to Ohio State, wins the national championship game, and it's just. But even then, the year before, they only went 9-4 with that same Will Howard. So it's really complicated as to what is this team like. What is this team? Is it a good team? Is it an okay team that sometimes is a good team? It's really hard to peg this team. I just feel like they are in many ways similar to some other teams we talk about. They win the games they should win, but then they lose the games that they wouldn't win. And that's generally indicative of a middle tier team. But like sometimes those games that they shouldn't lose. But they very rarely win a game they should win, right? Like while looking through the schedule, it's like, could they lose to Army? Yeah, sure. At Baylor, yeah. At TCU, Kansas, at Utah, none of those are fun. Versus Iowa State there in Dublin, there's you can easily find 4 losses here. I think the 8.5. I think you'd probably play the under. I'm just going to leave it alone. I think there probably might be better variance on it game to game. But man, this team has just given you a lot of heartburn in many years. You just wish you could fade them on a week to week basis. And it's weird because sometimes they will look so dominant, right? Like when they beat they were 3-point favorites at West Virginia. They won 45-18. And then 2 weeks later, they're 12-point favorites at Houston, and they lose 19-24. They lose 5 as 12-point favorites. I don't know what you're supposed to make of that. I honestly don't. It's such a weird team that just does weird things.
Yeah, just my gosh. Question marks all around here. And they'll probably finish 9-3 and just shove it in our face, as Chris Kleeman does. Okay, Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. There's a lot of buzz about this team. They've got some ground to make up. I had them rated 12th overall in the Big 12. I really like the new coordinator hires here. Mac Leftwich, pardon me, from Texas State as the OC. I like that. I really like the new defensive coordinator. I believe it's Sheilwood. I think that's like an appropriation of Sheila, or adaptation. Sheilwood. Houston last year, we talked about how good their defense was, and then he was basically before that within the whole Willie Fritz and John Summerall tree. So, proven made man as far as I'm concerned. They're 6th in FBS in 2025, Ryan. Baron Morton, the bad news is the good news is the bad news is that he stunk as a freshman. He improved as a sophomore. This is not enough. 89 in your second year starting is not going to cut it. We are leaning hard on new offensive coordinator Leftwich to really bump him up like 2 levels to contend here. Now, the defense was really not good in what was an underrated defensive conference. Now, you've got all green here, so they should improve a ton on defense. All over the place is that they've really pounded the heck out of the portal. They got who was supposed to be starting tailback for my Trojans, Quentin Joyner, who is very good. We'll just see what his top end is, but he was very promising. Also got David Bailey from Stanford, who had a ton of sacks there and left when Troy Taylor was let go. Very lucky team, though, last year, too. So I think this is the difference between me and the market, is that I'm paying attention to this 12 power rating, and people are looking at, this team went 8-5 last season. So that's probably the delta between me and the market. Excuse me. Season win total is 8.5. I can't see it. I like all the changes that they made. I think that they were not nearly as good as their record indicates, and there's a lot of ground to make up with a super suspect quarterback here. Put it all together, I say they're overvalued, probably not bettably, and I don't see anything in those first 3 games that's bettably so. I might just hope that maybe Utah stays below the weeds and can really sucker punch them at Rice Eccles, as Utah is wont to do from time to time. I'm trying to be nicely bearish. Am I being too hard on Texas Tech and specifically Baron Morton, Duck?
He's back from shoulder surgery and he's healthy now. There could be some upside with him, and I would assume that he would throw for over 4,000 yards this season. Just a little fun thing we can do here. I have the over-under on his passing yards through the first 2 games of the season set at 814 because he squares off against Arkansas Pine Bluff and Kent State. And I think he'll throw for over 814 yards, and he'll probably do it in 5.5 quarters. So,
yeah, there's just a matter of like how soon he gets pulled, right?
I think so. Nobody spent more money in the portal this season than Texas Tech. They are absolutely loaded at the positions that they needed to shore up. They went out and bought an offensive line. The skill rooms are loaded. They've got guys like Reggie Virgil and Roy Alexander, who they brought in from the portal, and they had 230 targets between the 2 of them last season at Cartwright and Miami of Ohio, respectively. And you've got Quentin Joyner, who comes in from USC, who averaged 6.5 yards a carry. You probably know a little about him, Buck. And
yeah, although in backup he wasn't doing the heavy lifting. I gotta say that very promising, but it's a little difference coming in after I've set up the punchline and you tell the joke, right?
I suppose so. Yeah. Defensively, in theory, on paper, they look loaded. They completely rebuilt the front 7. They've got a ton of talent that they brought in through the portal. Now it's just time will tell on how it all gels together. At times, we've seen this from other programs, and these programs end up 7-5. So I'm not going to say it's doom and gloom. I'm not going to say that they're the best team in the Big 12. I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. I think you have a schedule that appears favorable. You've got Houston, Kansas, BYU, UCF, West Virginia on the slate. Those are certainly second-level tier teams according to all the rankings. Oklahoma State's on that schedule. You got at Kansas State and at Utah. That'll be tricky. And you got to go to Arizona State, and really that's where the season will be won or lost, I think, is those 3 road games. Yeah, and they're probably all coin flip games, if I'm being honest with you. I don't see a real big spread in any of those 3 games. I'm thinking we're within 4 points either way on all 3 of those road games. The path is there for Texas Tech. The path is there for Morton to have a monster season. I think we've got some opportunity with this bunch. I just don't know I just don't know because there's so much unknown. So it's really a team that I traditionally don't spend a lot of time betting on until I actually see what the cohesiveness looks like, see the product on the field, because it's just such high variance outside of these first couple of games. Oregon State could be a little bit of a game where we learn something about these guys, but at Utah's where you're going to find out a lot about this team. So it's a pass for
Yeah.
me. It's hard to go under the win total because the schedule is soft, and they'll probably open up 3-0 before they hit the league schedule. But I just don't know because there's so many moving pieces and so many moving parts, and I have to see it first.
Agree. Robert, I'm trying to look here really quick. Yeah, Texas Tech actually made the top 25 in the AP at 23. Let me ask you this. If you've got almost, notwithstanding Duck's kind words, I think he's just being generous to Corvallis here. I think you've got 3 layups here to start the season. If you've got 3 layups and the market's basically saying you're a little bit better than 6-3 in the conference, aren't you too high in the AP preseason poll?
Yeah, I think the hype has definitely gotten ahead of Texas. People are like, oh man, they've dominated the portal, they got everyone. Good, because they were pretty far behind, so it's good that they can use that to catch up, right? I'm really getting a bit tired of this massive Texas Tech portal hype. Oh man, they bought everyone, and you read some articles about it, and all the coaches are complaining and stuff like this. It's like, they weren't that good. Yeah, they need the help. And also, we haven't seen, like, with the exception of maybe Colorado that was able to get, like, when we think of teams that built the portal, the one we always think about is Colorado 2 years ago, right? When Dion came in, brought everyone in, that team didn't make a bowl game, right? So you're not importing a roster and contending for a national championship. Now, obviously, Texas Tech a lot more to build on than I think it was the year before. 1-11 Colorado, if I remember correctly, before Deion Sanders came, or it was something like, it was a 1 or 2-10, or it was a bad year. This is clearly a better team than that Colorado team. But yeah, like, no one has ever been able to, like, any team that's been able to build a portal and win a championship, there's always been like, oh, okay, then we also were good before, and it's like those pieces are just putting the finishing touches on a team, not building the team from scratch. Brent Morton was not amazing. He was okay. They do lose their offensive coordinator. He's now the head coach at FAU. And they had a pretty fun offense last year, and the fact that you lose him is probably a bit of a problem. Their defensive coordinator, though, wasn't particularly good, so it's okay you lost him, but the loss of the offensive coordinator is a bit of a problem. But again, like, this is the same team that last year barely beat Abilene Christian. Right now, that's because Abilene Christian scored 51 points against them, which, to be fair, if you score 51 points against anyone, yeah, you should be competitive in that game. But this is the thing, right? I'm just not 100% sure how good this Texas Tech team was before. I think maybe they were a bit overvalued before, and then now all this portal hype, now they're even more overvalued, right? So I think this team could be good, but they're not getting my bet for the thing. The 8.5, I see some tough games here, right? At Utah, at Arizona State, at Kansas State. That's 3, right? Now, okay, it's 8.5, so that's all you can lose. If you lose those, okay, but you also have Kansas. You have Kansas at home. If Oklahoma State, if Mike Gundy tries to save his job or something, fine. BYU, maybe they could figure things out by the end of the season. And
very specific scenario, by the way, I have to point out. But go on.
Yes, random scenario. I'm sure will never happen. And then at West Virginia, there, like, we're going to skip over Scott Frost there, but it's the thing, right? There's some scenarios here where there could be another loss, and they could go under that 8.5. I think if there's anything you're going to play, at that number, at -130, I'm not touching it. But if I'm suddenly getting plus 150 for under 8.5, yeah, I'll pull the trigger on that.
A couple things too. I would say they are upgraded at the coordinator positions. Both coordinators that come in, I think they're upgraded. And if you go room by room, position by position, they are better at every position. Now, I want to see it on the field before I bet on it. But the way that I would play this is, if they go to Utah and lose, those conference championship odds are going to dip to 9-1, 11-1, or worse. That's when you play Texas Tech after that first game. If they lose at Utah after that first conference game, that's when you jump in and try and pluck them to win the league.
Yeah, after a whole season of just great off-season pub. I will say too, just following up on your point, I do both coordinator hires. I just think that it might take a year to really manifest itself to the degree that some people are projecting, but not on this podcast. Okay. The TCU Horned Frogs. Josh Hoover, a very nice 118 apex as a first-year starting quarterback for Sonny Dykes. They do lose Jack, I guess it's Betch. Not sure. Going to be careful with that one. But Eric McAllister does return. 489 for return. That would lead a lot of teams in terms of returning Ryan just for him. So it's not like they're starting over from scratch here. Sneaky thing that I liked going into last year that I've heard only one podcast talk about is Andy Avalos made a really good difference on this defense. I liked that hire. He's the quadruple A coach, basically the minor leaguer who's not ready for the major leagues. He's a coordinator that was not ready to coach, and he was perfectly suited for a situation like this. This is a school that's bought in with resources. Improved the defense in year one. It should be, you got a lot of returning starts here, so you should see at the very least some sustainment, if not more improvement in year two. This week one game at North Carolina is going to be fascinating to me. I think the line is swung on this. I think TCU, I've got a proven defense here. I've got a proven quarterback. I've got at least one really good receiver, just for context, because I'm selfish and I always make it around USC. If Mr. McAllister was on USC, he would be their top-rated receiver in terms of Ryan from last year. So this is not a barren situation. There are a lot of pieces here that are in place that I think a lot of people are overlooking. The cat might be out of the bag if they beat up Bill Belichick and his 20-year-old girlfriend, so it might be short-lived in terms of the anonymity here. I think the 6.5 is stupidly low. The over at minus 170, that's not a lot of fun. If I can find an alt line at 7, I'd probably jump on that. This is one I'm just on the fence on. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet it, but this team is really getting overlooked. I'm not hearing a peep about this team, and there should be peeps all over the place. Are you prompting for peeps like I am, Duck, on this team?
Definitely the defense should be very strong in league play. I think that they have completely shored up what they needed to in the portal. They got some guys in the secondary to help provide depth. The front seven looks to be in fantastic shape. And they even brought in Anseldin Muba from Washington State, who had 7 sacks last season and was in on a bunch of tackles. And he's going to be one of the second platoon on the defensive line. So I think you've got a team that's certainly ready to go defensively, which is not by Sonny Dykes' nature, as he's been really known for offensive football over his time as a head coach at FBS. Mm-hmm. But really, the defense is coming along here, and Andy Avalos has really made a world of difference with TCU, where they would lose games time and time again because their defense couldn't get off the field, couldn't get stops, couldn't hold it together in the fourth quarter. And we're starting to see that come full circle with this group. And so I think really a team that has less question marks there than anywhere. Now, some tough road games on the schedule, but all these teams have that. Arizona State on the road, Kansas State on the road, probably your two toughest, and then Baylor and Iowa State at home. So you get some of the bottom teams in the league, you get some of the contenders in the league. Where are the breaks going to fall? I can tell you right now, 6.5 is too low. I would absolutely play over 6.5. I think there's probably room to go on that. I think you can go 7.5 if you could find one there with some plus odds, as this team should be very strong based on the slate. I've got probably six games you can feel really good at lining up, thinking you're going to go in and win, and probably 6 more that are coin tosses. I really don't have them as a significant dog in any games. The real big one will be the Iron Skillet against SMU. It's a regional rivalry game that they are really motivated to win. They get that one off a bye and then off FCS Abilene Christian, so they should be healthy and ready to go there. So I'm interested to see what TCU has when they play SMU and what the team looks like there before they hit the conference schedule. But yeah, it's a bunch that hasn't really been talked about seriously for the conference championship game. But my goodness, you beat Kansas State, you beat Baylor, you don't play Texas Tech, you don't play Utah. It's probably going to come down to tiebreakers anyway, but if you win some of those ones, this team could rack up the wins the second half of the schedule pretty easily and find themselves shooting up that Big 12 leaderboard like Arizona State did in the second half of last year, where maybe they lose a game early, but then they can find their footing late. So, yeah, I think this is a team that could be sneakily dangerous in Big 12 play.
You bring up a good point because it agrees with my point, but there's very few people on the face of this planet that I would want to ask this question of more than you. This is probably going to be Sonny Dykes' best defense he's ever had as a head coach. Is that fair?
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. That says a lot to me because offense is never a problem with this guy. Yeah, this is an overplay for me. Robert, look at those first 3 games. You've got a really mixed bag here. At the boyfriend of the 23-year-old lady assistant head coach, Abilene Christian at home, and then a kind of a mixed bag of unknown / mystery gift in Dallas of SMU. This can go a lot of ways here. Where do you think they start? What's their record after 3 games here?
I think it's 2-1, maybe. I think 2-1 or maybe 3-0. I do like their favorites at North Carolina, and that's going to be a big game. That's Monday night game. There is no NFL Monday night game at that point, so that is your standalone, full. Everybody's attention is on that game, and I'm looking forward to that game as well. That we're only just a couple weeks away from opening weekend here, and that's going to be. There's not just games on. Or no. Oh no! Wait a minute. No, I'm wrong. Sorry. That is the Sunday night game, I think.
Monday.
Oh, is it the Monday? What's the Sunday night game? Oh, is the Sunday night game Miami Notre Dame?
I think no, that got moved to Saturday.
No, that could be right. There's 2 of them on Sunday. South Carolina and Virginia Tech play that Sunday. And
yes. Sorry, that's right. I was right the first time. This is the Monday night game. Sorry, guys. But anyways, again, I'm still looking forward to it a lot. I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be an amazing game. I want to see how good this TCU team is, and I want to see how good the Bill Belichick team is. It's going to be amazing. Like 6.5 seems really low. I feel like this is people still pricing in bad memories from that 2023 TCU team and being like, oh, they sucked, right? They won the national champion. They won the they actually lost the Big 12 championship game, went to the national championship game, and then they lost there. And then the next year that they go 5-7, so not the greatest come back. But then again, they went 9-4 last year. That's a pretty good record. Like 6.5 is okay. They're over 6.5, but that's basically pricing in only a 60% chance they make a bowl. There's something weird about this. Like they are 3.5 points, depending on which book you look. They're 3.5 point favorites at North Carolina, one of the most hyped teams in the country this year. And yet their win total is 6.5. North Carolina's win total is 7.5. So something is very weird here with this. I think the books know that this team is better. I think they're probably taking under money. That's why that number is where it is. But okay, you've got Arizona State, you've got Baylor on the schedule, you've got Iowa State, at BYU maybe, and SMU. But honestly, it's not that bad. It is honestly not that bad, and I think this could be a very legitimate team, and I think that I want to see where this goes. I think the over 6.5, makes a lot of sense, and I think this could be a very legit team.
Yeah, there are 3 things schedule-wise to point out, though. They play SMU in the Iron Skillet. That's their primary rival. Then they've got to go to Arizona State on short rest on a Friday night. And then they get later on in the schedule, they go to Kansas State, and then they have to play Baylor immediately following that. Baylor's off a bye. And then they got to go to Houston late in the season off a second of back-to-backs, go to BYU, and they go to Houston. Houston will be off a bye. So those 3 will be – it's not favorable from a schedule perspective, so I can see that.
Robert, before I go to the next slide, this is just going to be playing an oldie but a goodie. I don't know if you've been – obviously we know that Jake Retzlaff is no longer with BYU, and I don't want to spoil it, but are you aware of – according to Phil Steele, did you catch who the starter is going to be now? Just according to the Phil Steele depth chart.
Yes, Trayson Burgay.
Does that name ring a bell?
Does for me.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Wasn't that the court for Arizona State?
No, that's his brother. Yes. In the last, the dying gasps of the head coaching career of Tim Lester. When we had just comedically bad quarterbacking at Western Michigan. He was part of that mess. He and was it Jack Sapolek was the other quarterback there? Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, congratulations BYU. Yes. Congratulations BYU. You're going to enjoy the Trayson Bourget. I can't imagine he's going to start. I can't. This is just. I think he's going to be shocked. There's no way. He had to be just going there for a very specific degree. There's no way he went there thinking, yeah, watch me tear it up in the Big 12 here. All right, I did have BYU as a top-rated team in the Big 12 last season. For some reason, I left in my remark there about Jack Betch, so disregard that. Had them as a top defense in the Big 12, 13th in all of FBS. I'm really interested to see week 2 and 3 against Stanford and East Carolina, because I think that to me is the acid test of Trayson Bourget led BYU. Their defense is still going to be good. Their offense was good, but the quarterback play wasn't that great. It was okay. Retzlaff was hit and miss, I guess I'd say. I'm going to read a lot into those games against Stanford and East Carolina. I think they just take a big step back at the quarterback position, and this conference is just too deep. They're starting from 2 steps behind now. 6.5, that doesn't seem right. And laying 150 to go over. If I look, the only conference team I would be surprised to beat them would be maybe Arizona and West Virginia. But there's a lot of L opportunities there. I don't think the market, and look, I could be completely wrong. This is overvalued to me, but not bettably. But geez, I could see this going bad in a big way. And I guess first I'll go to you, Duck, since you heard it with a smirk on your face, the great Trayson Bourget era at Western Michigan. What am I missing here? Was he just like, okay, that wasn't a great position, but can he even be functional in the Big 12? Is he not the guy, I guess? Maybe I'm missing that.
I don't think they have a guy. And I think it's real interesting, and we'll get into the schedule here. A couple things I want to say. So the BYU regular season win opened early in the spring at 8.5, and it was quickly bet down to 7.5. But 7.5 under was heavily juiced, as they were thinking that number was going to be 8. I took a position on under 7.5 at plus 140. And that was right the same day that the Retzlaff news broke that he was going to be suspended by the university for violating the ethics code. Now, that's been adjudicated out, and he's been cleared of any criminal charges, but he was still facing suspension, so he withdrew from college. He walked on at his next program, and it was announced today that he's going to Tulane, which is really interesting news in the AC. There's a lot going on here with BYU. I think they were a real fortuitous group. It was stunning that they beat SMU. They were absolutely dead in the water against Oklahoma State and found a way to score a really late touchdown in order to stun Oklahoma State. It wasn't a Hail Mary, but it was like drive down the field in 5 plays with 25 seconds left and just completely stun them. They barely beat Utah. They were very fortunate to beat Baylor. And they won all the close games and then destroyed an apathetic Colorado bunch in the bowl game who didn't show up. But I think that the song is going to be a little bit different tune this season for BYU. I think that there's a lot of significantly lost production, particularly in the trenches when you look at losing their center and both tackles and having to replace that. LJ Martin will be fine at running back if they can open holes for him, but there were stretches last season where BYU was just kind of okay in the run game, not a ton of explosivity and not a lot of pop. And so I think it'll be real interesting to see with a limited threat of passing game if teams are just going to throw 8 in the box and dare them to throw over the top. Trayson Bourget would not be the guy to be able to execute that. But even defensively, they lose guys. Their sack dude, Beatty, and John Nelson and Mangelson are gone on the defensive line. They lose significant production in the linebacker group. The pass defense rating was really exquisite because they were just timely with their defensive back play. They had 22 interceptions. They only allowed, 54% completion percentage, and they had all the red zone turnovers. And so generally red zone defense and third down defense is one that is fairly consistent from season to season, but there's a lot of turnover in this group. I think with the change in quarterback, you now have 3 specific situations that could turn to potential losses. At ECU, looks a lot different now, having to go across the country and play that group. It's a proud bunch. It's a group that has a lot of, I think, upside this season in ECU if they can get it figured out from the quarterback position. And it's a group that plays with real spirited effort, as we saw in the bowl game last season against North Carolina State. That is no longer a shoe-in. Then they got to double back and they go to Colorado and play an elevation. Again, I'm low on Colorado this season, but that's no longer a layup. And then their second to last game of the season in the middle of winter, they've got to go to Cincinnati. And that's just going to be one that bunch will certainly have circled on senior day for the Bearcats. And there's just so many now that become questionable. So Portland State, they'll still win. But now you have Stanford coming in. Then you got the 2 road games. You've got Utah, Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati, at Iowa State immediately after the Holy War game. There's just too many roadblocks. I wouldn't go under 6.5, but under 7.5, which is still out there, I would do.
Really? All right. 1 point. East Carolina is way better than those those defenses that pulled his pants down every week in the MAC. And that's one of the easiest games on the schedule here from a defensive standpoint. I don't know. Good information on the history of that line too. I appreciate that. Robert, my reaction to that information about 7.5 to 6.5 is just I think the market just doesn't understand, and I don't want to make this about one guy. I always say I don't want to crap on some guy. Duck's a little more nice saying I don't think they have a guy. I just think the market doesn't understand kind of the quarterback situation here, to put it nicely. Is that fair?
Yeah, I will make it about one guy. I will just read off the stat line here from Phil Steele. So in 2 years at Western Michigan, in 8 starts, 1,314 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So it's less than 200 yards a game passing against MAC schools. Less than 1 passing touchdown a game against MAC schools. Now 2 interceptions. Okay, that's pretty cool. But you didn't do it. Like you didn't hurt the team, but like you didn't actively help the team. Like you're saying you didn't even get 1 passing touchdown a game against MAC schools. You didn't get 200 yards passing a game against MAC schools. That's not good. That is really bad. And again, it's as a backup quarterback that's concerning, but as the starting quarterback that's terrifying. And that's the thing. And obviously with BYU, not a great situation. This is definitely not what you want in a situation like this. But like at a certain point, like I think the under 6.5 is still bettable. I'm seeing some plus 120s. I'm actually going to grab that right now. But this is the thing. It's a terrifying situation. It's unfortunate with the whole Retzlaff situation. Obviously, different schools have different ethics codes than other schools, but that's fine. But this is the thing. It's that it's a horrible situation to be in, and now kind of really stuck. And they have to do something, and I think this is... It's not a good option, but it's kind of the only option they have. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and remind me, this happened after spring practice too, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was discovered. I don't necessarily think that the incidents took place, but I think it was discovered, and there were allegations made by the female that was involved in the situation that came to light after spring practice. But it was a relationship that occurred prior to 2025. Yeah.
And whatever he wants to do, fine. I'm not going to ask him about what, let alone when. My point is, it's not like they even had a chance to work in Trayson as QB1 over the spring. So I think if they had the whole spring, this would be mission impossible. I think he's just going to fail the standard that Robert and I set in one of the earlier pods this year. Is like, just don't be Gavin Wimsatt. I think he's not going to be able to pass that test. To the extent there's going to be open guys, he's not going to hit them. So what's tricky about this is, Robert, I mentioned to you, I have the double money line method, I guess, if I'm going to call it something. I don't even know how to do it here because I can't quantify what this team is now. I guess, Duck, does that seem fair? It's like, okay, they take a step back at quarterback, but I don't even know how to value them. You know what I mean? It's just not good, concerning. Does that seem fair? It's like I don't even know what kind of value to put, but God, they're not going to be nearly as good.
Yeah, just got to try to get out ahead of it with the week-to-week wagering and the lines, unless you're willing to find a way to shop around and take it under 7.5. But this group is still power rated highly until those power ratings get adjusted. I'm sure the power rating numbers won't be really knee-jerk. Rarely will you see more than a 3-point drop. Unless it's an elite, all-worldly quarterback, which even Retzlaff really wasn't. But I would say find spots where it's going to be tricky for these guys to compete or to keep up offensively. And that Holy War game looks a lot tougher when they host Utah, and then they got to go to Ames, and they got to go to Texas Tech after that. And I think there's going to be some spots this year where this group is just really it's going to be one of those BYU teams of old where they just muck up games and they have to play low-scoring defensive battles. And Kalani Sitake turns the hat around backwards and he's coaching that way where he's like licking his chops as an old defensive guy trying to really muck these games up and win a 13-10 type of game. And I think that's what we're going to see from BYU this season.
Look at this. And a guy in BYU blue with his hat on backwards is bringing that up. I hate to take a little detour here, but I just your both your guys' opinions on this. I understand that there's this kind of market wisdom or protocol that no injury is going to move a game more than X. I think that's a default that's a fault in the market. I think that when a program like Ohio State loses their starting left guard, they're probably going to have a really good backup left guard. I think that other programs that aren't as deep, when you go down the depth chart to the next one, there's a huge drop-off. I can't see that over the course of the season, this is only 3 points a game. I think the market's just wrong in that kind of assumption. What you're saying is correct. I think that the market's just wrong. You're nodding, Doc. Robert, you think I'm right too, or am I just like hopelessly bored?
Yes, I just bet the under 6.5. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Don't overthink it. Don't overtalk it. Just do it. What about you, Doc? I think that that kind of default's just there's a lot of opportunities in those default positions, like 3 points for a key player.
I mean, that's generally the consensus. Yeah, it's 3-4 points. It shouldn't really be more than that when you're looking at an actual betting line. But you and I both know that a starting quarterback is worth more on-field production than that. It's just that you just don't see that sort of movement in the line for one reason or another.
Let me ask you this: I'm just fascinated by this, and I love the kind of the theory behind the practice of the lines. If you asked a BYU fan right now, how many points a game have you lost in this quarterback change? They're smart fans, but how much? The answer is going to be well north of 3, don't you think?
I think that depending on who you ask, some of those people are maybe looking at this season with the rose-colored glasses on, so you may not get the number
realistic
that you
fans.
Realistic should be 8 points.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Robert. Fair, at least a touchdown a game.
At least.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you for indulging my. I don't know. That just was my favorite discussion of my week so far. Well, it's Monday of the last 2 weeks, let's say. Okay. Moving on. Cincinnati. The Scott Satterfield slow build continues, although they were surprisingly competent last year. The problem is, I don't know, it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. Yeah, he turned Brendan Sorsby from a really unimpressive guy at Indiana to the quarterback of a functional offense. But the quarterback position, again, they are well behind the top teams here, the top half even. Defense finally made a step forward here under Satterfield. They got a new DC. Tyson Vate, I guess you say, not surprising, the Iowa State linebacker coach. Actually, you know what? You line this up with the step back that Iowa State took last year, and this might be one of those who was really coaching the defense things. Just something to think about. I don't have a lot on Cincinnati. 6.5 under -130. I can't argue with that number. They opened the season neutral against Nebraska. I'm going to keep my eye. The thing I'm more interested in about anything else is this defensive coordinator who was the Iowa State linebacker coach. A two-way story here. If there's continued improvement here and if Iowa State doesn't improve, that might be a storyline later. But I don't have that much in the Bearcats. What about you, Robert? Anything more than I've got here?
It's tough, right? Again, yeah, you can make a quarterback be okay, but that's it. And that's the ceiling. And again, 5-7 last year, right? The year before 3-9, so it's improvement, but this is a tough conference. We see the impressiveness in terms of retention that Arizona State has, that Utah has. This is not that good of a team. This team was okay it was okay to mediocre last year. Not much, shouldn't be that much expected that much better this year. Like, I don't love it. I honestly think this is like when you have a smaller market team coming up into a bigger conference, this is what you expect and this is what you get, right? It's just this is a tough conference to play in. A lot of these are on the road, right? You're up north in Cincinnati, and okay, yeah, you get a nice little bit of a home field advantage there in the winter. But outside of that, you're going to Texas schools, you're going to Arizona, you're going to Colorado. Like, you're going to a lot of not fun places that are pretty far away to play in from Cincinnati Airport there. So it's not a great position for this team, and I think this team has definitely struggled since they've transitioned to the Big 12, and it shows that this is a team that this might be their program is maybe a bit out of its depth, and I don't love it. I think that's probably about properly valued. I'll probably leave it alone. I will say every once in a while, Cincinnati is a great spot. Sometimes you'll get some nice juicy lines like 7.5 here or a 10 there, and it's great to play Cincinnati when you get something like that and you like it. But other than that, it's a bit like it's not fun to play this team outside of those key spots when you see them or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I just realized too. Isn't it dumb that they don't even play West Virginia? Shouldn't that be like their natural rival in this conference? It's
Yeah,
like the
who
only
is
team
West
that's really nearby them.
who is their natural rival in the thing?
So I guess TCU, since they play them on rivalry Saturday. Okay,
Oh, true. Yes, yeah.
yeah, just a lot of bad blood there. Yeah, I don't know if these teams even know who each other is. I don't know. The schedule doesn't look that inviting either. Duck, what do you think? I think this schedule is not that great. I think if anything, the under would be the play here, but there's already money going in that direction.
I don't know. I could see them starting 3-1 here with wins against Bowling Green, a really bad Southland foe in Northwestern State from the FCS, and then I could see them beating Kansas on the road. I think, yeah, there's some to get excited about. I think that building obviously off a 3-9 season in 2023, and they improved 5-7, and they were really close. You mentioned they were competent, they were in games, they had situations that they mismanaged, and if you change a play here or there, man, maybe you win a game or two and you're going bowling, and it just didn't come to fruition. They had some real spirited efforts against West Virginia, TCU, Texas Tech, and Pittsburgh, and just couldn't get it done. And it was really unfortunate if you're a Cincinnati Bearcat fan to see, but I think this year the offense is going to change things up. But they should have a little bit more effective running game, and it sounds like they're going to maybe run Sorsby a little more this season. I think that the front seven should be better, and I think that they were okay at times last season. At times they were very poor against the run. At times they were all right. Hard, high variance team to really. I could see 5-7. I could see 7-5. The one thing I would really want to ensure is that some of the metrics, when you look at the defensive and offensive performance, like last year, for example, really good red zone defenses, they forced 15 red zone field goals and only gave up touchdowns on half the red zone trips, but they were in the red zone far too frequently defensively with 39 trips surrendered. So why were they getting gashed between the 20s? Why could they not get off the field some on third down? What was going on with the offense, and why were they just at times inept passing at times? He had an okay season, Brendan Sorsby did, but you just look at some of those in-season numbers where they just struggled to move the ball in conference play, and so they found themselves behind. And when you're always playing from 2 touchdowns behind, it's just such a different mentality when you're playing these games and you're trying to come back rather than hanging on to a lead, which they just didn't do the second half of the year. The Nebraska game is really fascinating, as that line was at 7.5, has now ticked down to 6.5. So some players believe Cincinnati can keep that close. It's in a neutral site there in Kansas City, and so should be much more of a Nebraska constituent, I would guess. But with the schedule, you've got Central Florida, Oklahoma State, Arizona, Kansas, who I expect to be at the bottom of the league. You host BYU, the second to last game that I think is winnable, and the non-conference is not atrocious. So yeah, I mean, I could see 6-6 for this bunch. I think the win total is still 5.5, and it's enticing.
All right. Okay. Not a lot of strong feelings on the Bearcats. So then I am going to keep my eye on this defensive coordinator. That is a big move up in one season. To the point, why did they struggle? Because they were really the year before this guy came on board. So we'll see. That's what I'm going to watch on this team. Duck, you and I are going to disagree here. Wore my Jayhawks shirt for this one. I had this Kansas Jayhawks team as the 6th best in the Big 12 last season by my power rankings. Their last 4 games of last year, they went 3-1 against the group of Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, and Baylor, who combined to go 27-9 in conference. This offense, and particularly Jalen Daniels, got it together at the end of 2024. Robert, you might remember that about midway through the season, Jalen Daniels was squarely on the bum list, like really firmly entrenched. Our guy turned it around. He had an apex of 102. Now, that's not awesome, but considering where he was like in October, that is a turnaround. I missed it. I completely missed it. So we're fourth here in an Apex Plus for this in the conference for Kansas last year among returning quarterbacks. Now they lose literally basically all of their Ryan. Their only Ryan is through the transfer portal. I want to take you back to Nevada in first year, and Brendan Lewis, his career got completely turned around by offensive coordinator Matt Lubick. Lewis went from being horrible at Colorado to being just a joke at Nevada to suddenly being good enough to play for Memphis. 100% Matt Lubick here. He's the co-OC. Jeff Grimes, the OC last season, is now off to Wisconsin. The defense is still an issue. I've got, again, kind of along the TCU lines here, I've got a good quarterback. I've got a proven coach. This under minus 180 is ridiculous. I don't know if they win 8 games. This is a high number, but Jesus, if I get plus money on it, I don't know. There's other places to bet more, but Duck, tell me why I'm wrong. You're definitely a lot more bearish on the Jayhawks than I am.
And it's not that I want to be, but I just saw so much ineptitude from this bunch last season, and part of it was the back injury. And they say once you have a bad back, you'll never have a good back. And so, yeah, he's back and he's cleared, but I don't know how much is that going to affect his play. And a couple seasons ago, Jason Bean was so critical when he had to jump in and play and win games for Kansas, which he was able to effectively do. I just look at the lost production, and I see guys like Devin Neal and Savion Morrison that are gone. The top 6 pass catchers are gone from last season. Grimm is gone. Skinner, Arnold, Jared Casey, they're all gone. You've got 3 starters from the offensive line that are gone. You have 9 of your top 11 tacklers that are gone, and there's just significant losses at all 3 layers of the defense. And it's not that they can't retool and that their guys that they're bringing up through the program are not going to be serviceable replacement players. I believe they will be, but it's just going to take some time. Now, they're breaking in the new stadium. Last year, they didn't play home games at all because they had to play in that goofy soccer stadium on grass, which they didn't want to do. And so it's certainly going to be a benefit to them to have their remodeled stadium up and running. But when you're looking at a win total, in my opinion, I'm trying to assess what is the number, where's the value, and where is this team going to be projected to be power rated in these games. I have them as an underdog of at least 7 points 5 times at Missouri, at Texas Tech, Kansas State, at Iowa State, and hosting Utah. Current power ratings show that they're going to be an underdog of at least 7 points. There's 3 kind of coin flip games, 1.5, 2-point spread either way, and that would be their game against Cincinnati, at Central Florida, and at Arizona. And then there will be favored in the others. Significantly against Wagner, they're 14.5-point favorites, or 14 against Fresno State, and they'll likely be a favorite against West Virginia. But I just see too many spots where this team is likely to be outclassed. I think the schedule is difficult. You've got to go to Missouri. You've got to go to Texas Tech. You play Kansas State, Iowa State, and Utah. It's a tough Big 12 schedule by many standards. They do get some of the bottom teams, but I think that when you're looking at all of the lost production, 38 seniors gone, and then all on the 2 deep that we talked about, for Lance Leopold, he's a miracle worker, and I don't want to bet against him, but it's fighting, clawing, and scratching your way to 6-6 and just trying to make a bowl game here, I think. Kansas has been a spectacular story when you factor in the 15 years of futility that they had from 2008 to whenever it was. Now reeling off a couple good years. I think you got to get to a bowl game. You got to start to build some momentum, get some recruits into that new stadium, and you're building towards next year. But to assume 8 wins, I think, is almost virtually impossible with this bunch that they have coming back.
I can't disagree with that, except for I will just throw it to Robert on this. Robert, how much credence do you put in that last 4 games of the season? These are 27-9 in conference. That is tough, man. Now, they missed Arizona State last year. Am I just reading too much? My gosh, that's an average of 7-2 in conference, a little bit less than that.
Yeah, they beat Iowa State as 2-point underdogs, but they beat them pretty convincingly. They beat Baylor as 2-point dogs, Colorado's 2-point dogs, and then at Baylor, they lost to Baylor. They lost at Baylor. That's the 3-1 there. Yeah, Iowa State made the conference championship game. And I think also BYU and Colorado could have made the conference championship game had they not lost those games to Iowa State. So these are very clearly good teams. I do share concerns with Jalen Daniels' injury concerns. This has been a couple of years now where there's a pattern where he gets injured and he gets banged up and it's just not the same. But they did turn it around towards the end of last season. I will say that like UCF, we'll talk about UCF, but they're not a coin flip to UCF. But outside of that, though, yeah, like you've got Iowa State, you've got Utah there, you've got Missouri. That's a tough SEC team. Could be good, could be not as good, but again, a tough team. Texas Tech, Kansas State. So you have some of these tougher teams. But the thing is it's like if they are that good, if they are a good team, and if Jalen Daniels can actually get back up to that level, the loss of all that Ryan does, right? That's a lot of Ryan. It's basically all of your Ryan gone, and you bring in some, but like all of it is that's never a good sign. But if you can't, like, there are some pieces here. If you can turn this around and you can actually, if the offense turns around and is massively improved from where it was last year with the new offensive coordinator, then they're just better. And then this is an 8 or 9 win team potentially. That's an option. Now, will that happen? I don't know. Like if you said, yeah, they went like 10-2, they lost to Iowa State and Utah, I could be like, yeah, I could see that. Or something like some combination like that. So if they are just a better, like if Jalen Daniels actually just has a really, really great senior year and he needed maybe more than just his base, he got injured and his back got injured, I believe, right before the Texas game in 2023. And then I think he was out most of, if not the rest of that year. And then if he just needed more time to rehab, maybe sometime middle of the year, and then that's when he started putting it back on. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. I think at some level, there's some shots you could take on Kansas. I think I'm not sure what the current to win the conference is, but I think it's something like 20-1 or something like that. That's not necessarily a horrible shot. Over 7.5, also not horrible either. So I don't mind taking some shots with this team, but yeah, I think there are some scenarios where this team could overperform.
Wide berth, is that fair to say? It's not like,
Yeah.
okay, this team's going to win 6 or 7 games. I could see him winning 4 or 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I mean, if they replicate, and again, it's not like they have the same team. Right before that 4-game stretch to close the season last year, they didn't look at a team that was coming close to going 3-1 in that stretch. At that point, when you give me Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, and Baylor, you would say best they're going to win 1 game. Best. And that's Lance Leipold. And again, some of these guys I just fall in love with, and he's one of them to a fault. So I can't be objective here. I'm talking myself out of betting it, but I don't know. There's a spot where they'll be bettable at some point this season. I got my eye on you, Lawrence, Kansas. So,
if I could just say too,
please,
if you really want the win total over, generally now people might have their own theory on this. I've been doing this for 18 years. I generally value a half a win at about 60 cents on the VIG. So a full win would be about, I don't know, 115, 120 cents. Now, you can get an over 6.5, minus 150, minus 145. So if you really want to go over, you might be able to thread the needle and just get yourself that extra win to give you some cushion. I don't know. I think I'm not going to talk you in or out of a play on the podcast here, but bare minimum, they're fighting and clawing and fighting like hell and trying to do everything they can to try to get to a bowl game. So I think 6-6 is the absolute floor. But it's 6-6, 7-5, 8-4. What's it going to be?
Doug, I appreciate that. My co-host is Canadian, so your job is to talk me out of that. He's too nice. He's Canadian.
Don't go over 7.5. Don't go over 7.5.
There you go. Thank you. Okay. I don't know what to do here. I've got a coach I love here at Houston, Willie Fritz. This was a rough first season, as was anticipated. The offensive quarterback play was abysmal last year. Not how much solace I take in Connor Wegman coming in to clean things up. I'll just say, to be continued. The new DC is Austin Armstrong, who is from Florida, who, Robert, you and I had some high hopes for, who did not work out and was let go. Their good defensive coordinator, as we talked about, is now at Texas Tech. There's quite a few guys in the Big 12 like this. It doesn't seem like long-term betting the under on a Willie Fritz team is going to be rich. I'm just going to call this reasonably valued at 6.5. It seems high, and the market agrees, but Fritz is a good coach. He's done it in several places, and he'll do it eventually here. Now, I don't know if he'll win the conference, but fade him at your own risk. And call me out here, since Robert's still in nice mode here. Am I just deferring too much to Willie Fritz as I do some of these coaches, Duck?
I don't think so. I think Houston's poised to make a big turn this year. I think Willie Fritz is one that has been proven time and time again over the numerous stops that he's made in his coaching career to rebuild and turn teams around quickly. And I think this could be a really scrappy group this year in Houston. I like what they bring back on offense. I think you got to hope the offensive line gels because and this is really true with a lot of teams. You could go through 114 of the FBS teams, and it's like, yeah, they got some transfers on the O line. Everybody does. Are these guys going to hit? Is this the right five to run this quirky offense in the system, and which can be electric and almost unstoppable? We've seen it at Georgia Southern. We saw it at Tulane. This can really start humming, and this team can really run through some teams and make them look foolish. And we saw flashes of that last season when they beat TCU and they beat Kansas State. And remember, for 3 quarters, they were really, really competitive in the finale against BYU. They were right there until about the last, 20 minutes or so in that game. They were competitive with Baylor. I don't think it's that far-fetched for Houston to be one of those programs that could really make some noise. Every year there's 3 or 4 programs throughout the Power Four, and it's like, where in the world did that team come from? And Houston was picked very, very low last year. I think the win total was 4.5 or so, which they did not exceed. This year, this is just a group that could be really tough in the trenches. They can really adopt the attitude of their head coach, Willie Fritz, and they can just impose their will in the trenches. I think with what they have coming back on the defensive line, you look at Carlos Allen and Khalil Lafau, I think these are guys that have just really bought into what they want to do. Linebacker, they seem to be shored up okay. The pass defense really was not bad last year against the pass, and they should be even stronger this season. I think they're going to be okay. Yeah, I'd say there is no question that I don't know they're going to win the Big 12, and if you think they will, I think it's 55-1. But Stephen F. Austin and at Rice are certainly games they'll be significant favorites in. Colorado's a winnable game. They host that game on a short week on a Friday night. I would expect that bunch to win that game. At Oregon State's winnable. This team could be 4-0. And you've got Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Central Florida.
Yeah, geez, I don't know. And the under is actually -142.
I think this could be a surprise group.
Interesting. Robert, you can. Doesn't seem intuitive until you talk through it, and then it seems a lot more plausible. You think there's something here?
I don't love Connor Weigman. That's where I start with this. Again, obviously this team needed help. And Willie Fritz knew this coming into this. We like him as a coach, but we knew this was going to take a while to fix. Right? This wasn't just going to be like, oh, okay, we're competitive year one. And obviously 4-8 is that. But could this team be good? Yeah, I could see this team getting to a bowl game. I could see it getting there. I'm not sure if it's going to be there. I really don't like Weigman. That's the thing. If I had to pick a quarterback, it would not be Weigman. But again, with some of these schools, what else can you do? Right? If you have no one else, you have to get someone, right? And that's the thing. But I don't know. I would if it wasn't Weigman, I'd be much more with this. But I like Fritz. I think Fritz is a great coach. I think Austin Armstrong was actually pretty good as well. But I don't hate this. I think this could be a good team, but I don't know if it's going to be as good as it. I think that's a pretty limiting quarterback there. That's my only concern.
And I know we spend a ton of time on this, but just for context, you're running a generic Big 12 program. I'm not going to say which one, and you have to pick a quarterback, either Connor Weigman or Trayson Bourget. Who's your starter?
Yeah, you got me there. I think you'd have to pick Weigman there over.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. I don't like it though. It's like a really bad choice either way.
Yeah.
It's like choose which limb you want to cut off. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's the answer, right, Duck?
The interesting thing too is they want to run their quarterback a little bit, and I thought Zeon Chris did okay last year in this system, and I think that they're probably going to have some packages for him. So
Yeah.
Weigman's definitely going to be the number one, but I don't know, 22% of the snaps, you might see Zeon Christen there to just kind of add another element. They're going to use both guys. And I'm here to tell you right now, Dean Connors, who comes over from Rice, just drives across town to suit up for Houston this season, is a very, very solid running back, and he'll have a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to run angry this season. I don't think that the pieces are terrible for this offense to be kind of one of these groups. Like, you remember the Georgia Southern teams that would just run right through the Sun Belt, or always play up against teams like Georgia Tech or Alabama, and they would give those teams a game. I think we needed to see a lot more punch from this Houston offense last season. And in the beginning of the season, my goodness, 7, 12, 0, and 0 points. We just didn't see it. But I think you're going to find the second year in the system, and you've got some guys in the portal. If the offensive line is a home run, and they don't have to be the Joe Moore Award winners, they don't have to be the best offensive line in America, but if the transfers gel and they can get the system down and the vernacular and understand the pre-snap reads, this offense really can make strides. I think Houston is a team that's certainly on the come.
That's a good point. Chris was like really good. He was one of my favorite Sunbelt guys at Louisiana. I think last season was a tough spot, year one of a rebuild. And Fritz is a very different kind of cat from Holgerson. And I think that he was probably stuck in new situation, total rebuild, and just adjusting to Big 12. His numbers were not good last year, but there's a lot there. And yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see him take the starting point to Robert's point. Oh, Mr. Wigman here. All right, enough pooping on quarterbacks here. Let's poop on a coach instead. Scott Frost. First season for Central Florida under the second reign of Scott Frost. Scott Frost, 13-0 in 2017. The rest of his career, 23-38. Robert, can you guess how many of those are winning seasons of the rest of the career?
None of them?
Yeah, that would be a 0. Yes, a 0. They lost all of their 2024 Ryan, basically.
I wonder why.
Yeah. Thank you. There we go. Salty Canadians coming out now. Evan Jackson, sure, good. I'm not going to argue with that. What I will argue with is Alex Grinch is your defensive coordinator. Enjoy that, folks in Orlando. Roster turnover abounds. They do avoid Arizona State and Iowa State. I think that this is going to a really bad spot. I think we all saw the quote where he said, "Don't take the wrong job at Media Day," when he was asked what he learned about Nebraska. Is that the same job that Matt Rule just got a bowl within 2 years, which this guy could not do in 5? Yeah, I don't know. I think this is pretty easy fade for me. I like the under. The fact that the over's getting anything makes it easier. I think that this is going to be a pushover team. I just don't see it working. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, the offensive line, only 10 returning starts on the offensive line, tons of Ryan lost. By any metric, worst head coach. They went 4-8 last year, and yet somehow the win total is over that. Like, you're expecting them to improve based off of last year. That sounds insane. Tavian Jackson was from Indiana. He had one good game. He was a starter. I think he was replacing Rourke there for an injury game, I believe. Don't remember who it was against, but it probably wasn't a particularly difficult team. Indiana just had a habit of just absolutely blowing out other teams last year, and a lot of them weren't particularly good either. So that's not really. I'm not thinking, man, this kid is good. So again, Alex Grinch, yeah, that's not what you want to see there. This is a guy who probably cost Caleb Williams a Pac-12 championship and like a playoff berth. Yeah, I don't love that combination there. Again, easy under for me. I think. Did you make that picture, the "don't take the wrong job," or did you find that online? Because that's like a perfect meme.
I don't have the skills to do that.
Okay, I think we're going to see that image a couple times this year for sure.
Yeah.
It'll make a return.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we're the same mind. Doug, I'll just start with you by asking you, how impressed were you with the quarterback play at Nebraska under Scott Frost?
I wasn't. It was poor.
Yes,
It was, the problem is this, and I'm never going to publicly indict somebody, but so before moving to Wilmington, North Carolina, I've been here a year and a half. I lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for 20 years. My wife's family lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. They're season ticket holders. They're close to people within the program. It was not good. The off-season work ethic in that program, the off the field extracurricular activities. He was not there in the trenches grinding like an FBS football coach should be. And it was just not good. And we saw unpreparedness. We saw a situation where they just couldn't turn over a new leaf when it came to the inept red zone performances, the third down conversions, the turnovers, the ways where you think a team has not reinvented a way to lose a game and they just continued to do it time and time again. It was stunning because that coaching tendencies and that sort of accoutrement to football was not something that we saw from Scott Frost coach teams at Central Florida, where he was absolutely locked in. And so could this situation be one where his career gets reignited and he really finds what he's looking for in coaching? That could be. I don't know that it happens this year. I think they're really up against it. I also think it's really hard to go under 5.5 when they're going to start out 2-0. And it might just really go sideways after they play North Carolina and Kansas State.
That's the thing. Yeah. They do start out with 2-0, but I'd be surprised. Geez, I wouldn't. Geez.
The thing about it, too, is.
Yeah. Go ahead,
it's a very high variance squad from the standpoint of they have 70 new players. So they're piecemealing together all of the different units. You've got new players in the running back and wide receiver room. You've got a completely revamped offensive line, and they should probably not be as explosive as they were last season in the run game. You've got all these transfers defensively that are coming in from different places, Miami, Oklahoma, the Ivy League. And how are these guys going to all gel together and start speaking the same language? I just don't know. And so I think that this is a marriage that could work in year 2 and 3, maybe year 2, year 3. Like this, he can get back to where he was perhaps, but this is a complete reset button. Hit the reset button on the Nintendo and the screen goes black, and it's like, this is a complete blank canvas, and it could, you might be just doing it on the fly. You might be trying to guess and check on who you have and throwing guys in there, and you're trying to do it on the fly. And so the first 2 games, I think we'll see some good performances offensively, and we'll kind of see that kind of UCF where they really pound the first weaker opponents, and then this could go sideways in Big 12 play quickly. I could never advocate for an over, and I couldn't advocate for any sort of long shot for them to win the conference because it's just not there this season, in my opinion, with Central Florida.
Yeah, I agree. And let me just give it to you, Robert, on this. Okay, first 2 games, let's assume they go 2-0. Not a big jump there. But if you look at just in those last 10 games, and let's set this up with, they're starting over at quarterback. They're starting over the offensive line. They're pretty much starting over on defense. They're only Ryan in this team's squad, the only 2025 Ryan is through the portal. There's a lot of pieces to Duck's statement that have to be melded together. So they're starting way behind almost every other team in the conference in that regard. In those last 10 games, from North Carolina onward, let me get the laser pointer here. Is there any game where they are not at a head coaching deficiency in any of those games?
I'll start with game number 3 there. I don't think I've ever seen such a stark coaching difference. Like, actually, like, that's a terror. If you're seeing that, you're like, this is genuinely terrifying. Kansas State should be good. Kansas may or may not be good. Cincinnati should be average. West Virginia, maybe I'm a little high, and we'll get to them in a second. Baylor should be good. Houston could be sneakily good. Texas Tech should be good as well. Oklahoma State, we haven't gotten to them yet, and Baylor should also. Oh, they have Baylor twice. No, last one should be BYU. Last one should be BYU. And what are we looking at? 3 wins, 4 wins. That's we're generously talking about 3-4 here. And again, is Jacksonville State, I'm just looking at the spreads here, 16.5 point favorite against 16.5 point favorites against Jacksonville State. I don't love that. I don't think that's. I mean, this is in one of his last games where he was that big of a favorite. He found a way to lose to Northwestern. Now it's Jacksonville State. It's a USA team. That's probably unbettable. But are we really confident he can cover 16.5 against a Conference USA team?
Well, and that's a tough one to me. Sorry, go ahead.
Jacksonville State has lost so much production from last season. It's a complete revamp. They settled at their positions. We could deep dive Conference USA at a later date and talk about Kennesaw State, UTEP, and all the other teams we know and love in that conference. But Jacksonville State is going to be ferocious this season. Their offense is not going to be nearly as explosive as we saw last season. It's just like Marshall in the Sun Belt. It is going to be absolutely nothing like what we saw from their league champions last season. I have Jacksonville State 7th or 8th in the Sun Belt, in Conference USA this year. Yeah, I think UCF could put it on that team, but that's not the barometer game is North Carolina.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would love to see if Belichick goes up by two touchdowns in the fourth quarter, he onside kicks just to.
It would work.
Point.
He would figure it out and it would work. Like he'd successfully do an onside kick. He'd be like, "This is how you're supposed to do it."
Yeah, this is how you do it, champ. Yeah. Okay, we are.
Let me tell you one other thing too here, quick, and I'll just say this about Central Florida because I'm sure a lot of the listeners do like to dive into some of the situational plays and some of the week-to-week wagers. I could see this team if they're at 4 wins and they got to go to BYU, and it's November 29th. It's the day after Thanksgiving or the weekend after Thanksgiving. It's butt cold up there. Yeah. What in the world are they showing up for in a situation where BYU might be playing to go to a bowl game? You couldn't set that spread high enough. That would even with our friend Trayson Bourguet quarterbacking that offense.
Yes, you buried the headline, as I like to say. The headline is Frost versus Bourguet. Who takes that one? Man alive.
I'd place a wager on BYU minus 14.5 right now.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Because why are they showing up to go to that?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. A few more here. Colorado. Look, this is a tough one for me. You lose Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner. I do want to point out, Robert, 2 years ago, I made an absolutely correct statement. I said if Colorado wins 8 games, that Travis Hunter is a Heisman finalist. They just took an extra year to do it, and the guy won it. You've got either Julian Lewis or a true freshman who was committed to SC, or Caden Salter from Liberty at quarterback. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. They had the second best defense, in the Big 12 last season. They're probably good again, but not that good. The 6.5 with heavy money on the under, that seems about right to me. This is just a guessing game. There's so many question marks, and I'm still not sure if I have any idea what Deion Sanders is as a head coach. So I'm going to Rick Neuheisel here. Just punting is winning. I'm punting here. I'm not going to try to make any kind of play. You got any opinion on the Buffs, Robert?
I'm fairly sure I've actually already bet the under on this team, but I don't love it. I just think that Shedeur Sanders and specifically Travis Hunter covered for a lot of deficiencies in a lot of games. Just looking down the list here, they lose to Kansas State and they lose to Kansas, but they decimated Oklahoma State 52-0. They beat up on a Utah team, beat up on Texas Tech, beat Cincinnati. There was a lot of games in here that were close, but really shouldn't have been close. I remember randomly North Dakota State, they decided to mess around with North Dakota State for a long time. Yeah. Got absolutely destroyed by Nebraska, which, if I remember correctly, Nebraska was up 21 to something at the 21-3 at the half, and then they just stopped scoring at that point. There were some times where this team looked completely out of its depth. Now, they basically were able to pack it on against a lot of teams that were hurting. For example, UCF wasn't in a great shape last year. They were weird, but Utah was in bad shape. So they were, and in Arizona, obviously, they were able to do a lot of stuff against a lot of kind of underperforming teams. And that definitely got them to the 9-4. But again, when you needed to beat Kansas to get into the conference championship game. Couldn't do it. I have concerns about the depth of this team. I think that it was really those two players. And I don't know if you can easily replace Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. Now, Caden Salter's not a bad start, but he's not listed as the starter. Julian Lewis is listed as the starter, which I would think is very concerning. Because what does that say about Caden Salter? He basically won the MAC Conference USA 2 years ago.
USA, yeah.
Yes, Conference USA 2 years ago. That is like a little concerning. He's not even a starter. So I'd be concerned about that. I think I think I got an under somewhere around here, but I don't. Could this team make a bowl? Sure, but I think this team's got a long way to go to get back to where they were last year, or even really back. This is probably going to be a massive step back. This is probably going to be a lot closer to the 23 than the 2014.
Yeah, definitely. But how much so is obviously the question. As I see, do you have any idea how much of a step back they take back here, Duck?
The Colorado win total at under 6.5 was one of my largest win total positions of the season. I already have under 6.5 in pocket, and believe me when I say I think this team takes a significant step back. The offensive losses are just absolutely tremendous. The offensive line last season was terrible. 43 sacks given up. I think it was 89 or 91 tackles for loss surrendered. This is a unit that just at times completely abandoned even an attempt to run the football. You had 1.1, 0.1, 2.2 yards per carry, negative 29 rushing yards against Kansas State. Excuse me. This was just a team that could not run the football and just didn't even attempt to at times. And they gave up 43 sacks with the heroic, epic performances from Shedeur Sanders to wiggle out of trouble, to make throws on the move, to extend plays and just bail their team out heroically. He's gone. The top four pass catchers, Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, Shepard, they're all gone. You're going to look at a bunch this season that is going to have to try to win the war in the trenches. And when you have your center that's gone, your right tackle, you've got freshmen that are stepping up to try to fill those gaps. And then on the defensive side of the ball, all your major dudes on the defensive line are gone. BJ Green is gone. Stokes is gone. Blanco is gone. Dayon Hayes is gone. There's just so much to replace in the trenches. Football's a 10-yard war. Normally, Colorado played it in an explosive offense type of war, but you have to try to run the football in order to win games. I felt like last year their season was one of unsustainability. You look at their games against North Dakota State, they could have easily lost. The Baylor game required a miracle in order for them to win. And they got blown out in the bowl game, which I thought was very telling. But, excuse me, you look at their head coach, Deion Sanders, and you know what? His son was the star quarterback last season, and another guy, Travis Hunter, that he really put his arm around and really adopted into their kind of family nature. Those guys are gone. So is there going to be any sort of motivational factor with Colorado? Is he going to be disinterested or disengaged at times in the season? We've already seen in the offseason this year he's had things that have caused him to step away from the program. I could just see this getting back to Colorado 101. It's like, this is Colorado. It's a non-competitive team. If you don't want to put an opinion into it and you just want to look at the facts, let's look at who they play. Georgia Tech in the opener, they're an underdog, and man, that Georgia Tech bunch is one that I think could contend for the ACC, and I love what they have coming back and what Brent Key is building there. I've got that as a loss. At Houston in week 3 is going to be really tricky. You got BYU coming to town. I mean, that is a flip game, but at TCU, Iowa State, Utah, Arizona State, Kansas State, this is a brutal Big 12 schedule, one of the tougher schedules for any foe in Big 12 play as far as my recollection is concerned. And I think this win total has room to move. I see this team absolute tops 5-7. This could be 4-8. This could be a really, really treacherous season for Colorado, and one that I don't know how you could play the over in this situation with this bunch and who they've lost, who they have returning, what The Colorado for 2 seasons now has just completely grabbed college football by the neck. The media frenzy has just been fanning the flames on this. And for what? At the end of the day, they had a good team last season. It was unsustainable in the way they won, but they found ways to win. All of those players are gone. And we've got Coach Prime there, and he's going to do his thing with the coordinators that he's got, some of the NFL guys that he brought in on staff that have been there. But I don't know. I could see this season being one that is just absolutely terrible for Colorado. And I will say this. We've seen them in a couple of different situations, namely last year against North Dakota State and in their first season with Coach Prime 2023. They were just so apathetic in games against Colorado State and even Stanford, where they were 16.5-point favorites against Stanford, had a lead of 28-0 at half, and they lose to the Cardinal. I could see their week 4 game where they host Wyoming. They're at Houston before, and they play BYU, which is a revenge situation. Maybe they recall the bowl game embarrassing loss. They got Wyoming coming to town, and I'm sure they'll be laying 3 touchdowns, but my goodness, how could you in that spot? I could see Wyoming mucking that game up and just keeping it within 8 to 10 points in the fourth quarter. How could you lay it with Colorado in that spot? So I'm going to take Wyoming in that spot if it's 3 touchdowns, and I'm fading Colorado on the win total.
Yeah, you just got this stretch here. TCU, Iowa State, and Utah is brutal, and then ASU and Kansas State. Man, yeah, it's not a favorable draw on the scheduling.
And I'm sure TCU remembers that embarrassing loss in 2023 after that national championship appearance, and then they were 3 touchdown favorites at home, and they got spanked by Colorado a little bit. I am sure that's one that they have circled in red ink. Let's put it on these guys this year.
Yep. Good point. All right, I'm out of being mean here, so I'll just be quick here with Oklahoma State. I had them as the worst team last season in the Big 12. Starting over at quarterback, they returned 0 starts, not starters, starts on the offensive line. This is a nice number, the 617 Ryan, but it's basically 6 players with 35 to 215 Ryan, so there's not like one big guy there you have to worry about. They had the worst defense in the conference last year. I don't see a significant improvement metric here. 5.5, not sure how we get there. And the under's taking a lot of money there. I still think that they're significantly overvalued. I don't know. There's some of these numbers at the bottom of the conference just seem like easily bettable on the under. I need to take a breath and just revisit this, but this is not going to be a good team again. I don't know if they'll be as I don't know if they'll be as bad as next season, but I don't see any reason for improvement. Am I missing something here, Robert?
No, it's going to be bad. But in typical Oklahoma State fashion, they're somehow going to be in like the top 25 somehow. But no, I don't. I guess Mike Gundy made the conference championship game 2 years ago. He should probably be on a kind of hot seat here, right? Like last season was really bad, and there's been a couple of years where this team, now maybe it's because this team gets so much respect that people think it's good. Again, this team gets so much respect, and I'm half joking that this team will start in the preseason top 25, but like there's been times where this team has been like a top 10 team, and they're like they're a horrific team, and this team is so oscillates between massively overvalued to like massively undervalued, or mostly just overvalued, to be honest. But this is the thing. This is no returning starters in the offensive line. You've got Zane Flores, who was a redshirt, did not play last year, out for a leg injury. I don't even know that's the bottom of the barrel. It's like a different barrel, a different worse barrel. Honestly, like it's bad. It's really bad, and it was bad last year. This could actually be arguably worse. Like I don't. Now, Mike Gundy said that apparently, quote, in the Big 12 Media Day, he said, quote, we finally started figuring out NIL, which, like, that's great. It's a couple years too late there, but I don't think it's going to save you this year. I think that this is going to be a multi-year rebuild based on how deep of a hole they've dug themselves.
I would say Texas Tech has figured out NIL more than Oklahoma State has finally done. Just my guess here. I don't know. Duck, are you as bearish on the Cowboys as Robert and I are?
Well, I'll start by saying that I can't imagine that TSN is covering a lot of Oklahoma State football, especially with the stranglehold that the Toronto Blue Jays have on the AL East at the current time, 4-game lead over the New York Yankees. Toronto Blue Jays are near and dear to my heart as a person who has family in the Greater Toronto area and who lived in that area for 5 years. We'll get into that later. But so let's go Toronto Blue Jays. But his ass is hot. And Mike Gundy's the seat is very toasty. Turn the seat warmers off because there is a little bit of pressure here for this coach this season, and they were not happy with the performance last year after making the Big 12 championship game in 2023. The pieces are missing, right? The quarterback is gone. The running back is gone. You lose a significant amount of contributing talent in the receiver and tight end room. The offensive line is just one that's just impossible to forecast. We talked about this before, but it's like you read Phil Steele, you read Athlon, you look at some of the Too Deep websites that are out there, and it's like, oh, this is a feisty bunch. This is going to be a group of transfers that their group likes. But what do they really have here? The drawing board is really tough. I think, you get a season opening win against UT Martin, likely. And then you go to Oregon, and who knows what that's going to look like. You get the early bye. You play local rival Tulsa, which is generally a good spot to back the Golden Hurricane, but that team is also atrocious, so likely not. But my goodness, you got Baylor at Arizona, Houston, Cincinnati. Even with some of the weaker foes in Big 12 play, what are you going to run through that schedule as? You're looking at 3 or 4 wins over the course of the entire season because you're not beating Kansas State, you're not beating Iowa State, you're not beating Texas Tech. You're not beating Baylor. It's just one where, yeah, there's some of the bottom teams in the Big 12, but you're also amongst that bunch. And I think it's really going to be a situation where this group is hard to forecast. You could suspect that there's some sort of rebound based on the history that Mike Gundy has over his 21 seasons here, but just not a lot to. I don't want to assume improved offensive play with a new quarterback who's very unproven. Even in the backup too, we don't know if he's got the it factor to compete at this conference. You're replacing Ollie Gordon. You're replacing a ton of production at all levels of the offense. And the defense was poor last year. They were poor against the run. Their pass defense ratings were very poor. They couldn't get off the field on third down. The red zone numbers are just stunningly bad for Oklahoma State. It was just a non-competitive football team that just didn't have anything to draw on. Special teams was mediocre. It was just one of those things where you just can't give up the yards. You can't give up the third down conversions. You cannot give up 52 defensive red zone attempts. My goodness, that's almost 5 per game. You're going to be behind the 8 ball a ton. I don't know. Even if we see marginal improvement or significant improvement, you're looking at an absolute max, I think, of 4-8, 5-7. I don't see this team. I don't see a path to a bowl game here. So, yeah.
Literally, the only thing. Where would you even make a case for them to improve? I think they have a new defensive coordinator now, right? They got rid of that Division II guy. I think so.
Yeah, Todd Grantham.
Oh, okay. Jesus. All right, take that thought back. I don't see. There's nothing for them to build upon. It's a quicksand program. I need to see some kind of proof of something. The only thing here is Gundy is a proven coach, but I don't know. I think they're just under resourced and they're making bad hires and they're not recruiting well, and I don't see it coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's a program that traditionally over the course of time, if you think back to all those really recollective, solid Oklahoma State programs in your your quintessential Big 12 that you know and love from your time as a college football fan, it was a developmental program. It was a team that had players in the system for 3 or 4 years, and they would always have guys that were ready to step up and be ready to go from the receiver position, from the quarterback position. Defensively, they were always whatever they had to be in the wide open Big 12. But with the NIL, this program has been hurt more than any other because there is no more developmental football. Nobody's staying at these programs for 4 or 5 years anymore, riding their time and then playing for a year and a half. It's just not happening.
Yep. Yeah. Sad. All right. Not going to spend a lot of time on here. Arizona, I don't know why it didn't work out. You had a great quarterback wide receiver combination last year returning. Under a first-year coach, Brent Brennan, who I think is really good. He did a really good job at San Jose State. But his apex dropped by 50 points. The defense takes a step back, too. 5.5 wins. I don't know. I'm almost apathetic here. Maybe they find something in year 2. I like Brent Brennan, so I'm not really dying to bet against him. So I'm not investing too much in analysis on this one. I'm just passing and just seeing if there's any kind of turnaround for the Wildcats. Is there anything more interesting about this program for you, Duck?
I think they'll pound Hawaii in their week one contest. Hawaii is a much different program away from home. And I think this will be a kind of a spot for them to really take it to a Hawaii program that I'm down on. And then they'll likely beat FCS Weber State. We won't get in the weeds on Weber State, but they were a strong Big Sky program for some time and have fallen on hard times. But after that, I mean, it's really hard to get excited about anything that Arizona has coming to the table this season. I think it's a tough schedule for Arizona when you factor in the fact that they have to play 10 Big 12 programs, as their game with Kansas State is a non-Big 12 sanctioned bout, but it is a Big 12 opponent. And you got them, Iowa State, Houston is going to be tough on the road. You got to go to Cincinnati. You got to go to Arizona State, which will be that's a rivalry game. They play them every year, but Baylor, yeah, it's just they're going to be looking up at too many teams here on the slate. So I think that you might see a team that is maybe a little bit more competitive on the field, but I don't think it's going to really turn out in the win-loss column. And so I don't have really a ton to love about this team. They did experience some injury last season in the trenches that kind of provoked their poor performance, especially defensively, just stopping the run. But I don't see a lot to spend a lot of time discussing.
Yeah. Robert, how many times does a program like Arizona lose a wide receiver like McMillan to the NFL and improve substantially?
Not particularly. Big thing for me though is just that defense. Just a horrific defense last year. Noah Fafita, and for everything we saw from him last year, he only had 2,800 yards in 9 starts, which seems low. Like I feel like every game he was running like 500 yards last year, but I guess he missed a couple games there. But no, it's graduation. Yeah, 1,000. I guess there's 1,000 yards there for T-Max. So McMillan. So it seems that seems like a bit low, especially even an 80 apex seems low for him. But yeah, no, I'm pretty out on this team. I don't like this idea. This seems like this is going to go pretty sideways. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would maybe there's one theory. Maybe I guess if I had to make any kind of case for them, it would be remember they scored 61 points against New Mexico in the opener, and they maybe just thought, oh, this is just like last season. And then they got punched in the mouth once they got into conference play, and they never recovered, and they didn't really understand what it takes. But all right, how does that improve this year? I don't see a path here. Very uncompelling team though. I like the quarterback though, but after that, I don't know. Probably won't be watching a lot of Wildcats ball. Sorry, Tucson. You're a great city though. Okay, last team. West Virginia. Look. Rich Rodriguez, we talked about that when we did the Jacksonville State preview in the Conference USA. He didn't make the discussion of excellent coaches today, but he's definitely a made man. Usually takes a year. His system is very specific. Starting over on offensive line and defense. I don't have a lot here. I've got a really good coach here that it seems like just at first blush, okay, unders the play, but he's a good coach in long term. I don't really think you're going to make a lot of money fading Rich Rod. The thing that's most interesting to me, and I'll ask you this since this is kind of the starter, Nico Martial. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Recruited by Neil Brown. So I don't know is he a running threat that would really is the kind of guy that Rich Rod would want, or is he going to kind of square peg round hole this in year one at quarterback here?
That's more the second option. I remember him getting a little bit of action last season in relief of Garrett Green, and he is pretty athletic, more athletic than you might think, but he's not Pat White, and he's not Tyler Huff from last year's Jacksonville State team, and he's not the dude to run the offense. So they're going to be behind the 8 ball there. I actually like some of the pieces that they brought in offensively, and I think that they could be a team that actually resembles a team that knows how to play football in his offense, but it's not going to be the West Virginia that we came to know and love. It's not going to be the Jacksonville State team that just completely ran through Conference USA last season with the 2 or 3 great running backs and the explosivity of Tyler Huff. I mean, if you look at Jacksonville State last season, They were dead in the water. They were blown out embarrassingly by Coastal Carolina. They were absolutely blown out by Louisville and didn't even belong on the same field. And then they lost to a very poor Eastern Michigan team that proved to be really, really just undersized and unspirited for Chris Creighton coached Eastern Michigan team. But once Huff figured it out offensively, it was just like a complete 180 with that unit. Now, do they have a guy in the room that we don't know about that's going to do that? I really don't think so. But there's a chance that they might. I think there's still a couple of pieces, but it's just a complete shift in what they ran under Neil Brown offensively. There's new staff. The coordinator offensively, Chad Scott, was retained, but what's that even mean when he's not gonna be? They're not running his stuff. They're gonna be running the Rich Rod offense. They're gonna try anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be atrocious, and I truly believe, based on the VIG, I wouldn't be running to the window to go under 5.5, as I think there's a chance they can figure it out against Robert Morris in Ohio. And then who really knows what Pitt's going to be in the backyard brawl? It's going to be a spirited rivalry game that they host. Is this a bunch that could they be 3 going into conference play? But then you really got to try and stretch in order to find where the wins are going to be, because I just don't see this group beating Utah, BYU, TCU, and the list goes on and on, Arizona State, Texas Tech. They're just going to be significant underdogs way too many times. So maybe a team that I might play if they're catching a bunch of points and they're catching a team in a bad spot. But I really don't want to be looking at this team to try to make a bowl game necessarily. They could, but I don't want to put my money on it.
All right, not to run the same gag again, but I'm talking to a guy in a royal blue T-shirt and he's got his hat on backwards. If you're BYU, would you rather start Trayson Bourget or Nico Martial?
I'd rather start Nico, but I'd rather play that game at BYU on a Friday night on a short week after getting beat up physically by Utah. So that's a situation where I would play BYU against the number. It's a scheduling spot favorable for BYU.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, they get the Utah teams back to back. Sorry, Robert, just had to get to the coach one more while we still have it on our podcast.
Yeah.
Are you kind of like me where it's like, yeah, maybe under, but not really wild about fading Rich Rod?
No, I don't love fading Rich Rodriguez either. I think he's actually pretty good at this. I don't know if he has the pieces to do it this year, but at some point he will, and at some point this will be a concerning team. I think Nico, 2 starts, 434 yards. That's over 200 yards to start. Trayson Bourget doesn't have that. So just saying. But that's the thing. And again, that's only 2 starts. You'd expect improvement. Bourget's already played most of a season. Actually, technically 2 seasons. So you're getting what you see is what you get with that one. But no, I know all line is concerning. Lack of defense is also concerning. But again, if you see something like a plus 7.5, I think you could definitely grab it for some of these teams. If you see plus 7.5 versus like with them hosting Pittsburgh, oh yeah, 100%. Right? If you see some insane number at UCF, again, like there's certain spots you could definitely pick and choose here. I think this isn't going to be their year, but I think that next year definitely could be. And I think the only advice I give to this program is start some sort of rivalry with Cincinnati, like steal a mascot or something, and get that to be a rivalry game. There you go. That's the strategy for this year.
Steal a mascot. That's the fail-safe. It always works. Okay, cool. Good analysis. So with that, we will have our wrap-up questions here. First one upset involving a Big 12 team. Since Robert and I have gone first before, we will let you go first on this one.
All right. Let me thumb through it here real quick.
While you're doing that, I'll go because I don't think this is going to steal from either of you guys.
Yeah, so let's edit out the delay, too, if we could.
Okay. I will go first. Kansas is going to beat Texas Tech.
I like that.
My underrated versus my overrated. All right. Either of you have one handy here?
Is there someone? Let me just check Texas Tech. There's got to be someone else you can fade Texas Tech with. I hate to steal. I think. Let's go. TCU over Kansas State. That should be an upset, right?
I think so. I'll give it to you. They're later in the
There.
steel.
Yeah. All right. Works. It's at Kansas State too, so that's fair.
Duck is looking at Central Florida. He likes him to upset somebody. He's just trying to pick a spot here. I know. Scott Frost over.
No. Baylor has to go to TCU in a rivalry game, an old Southwest Conference rivalry game on October 18th. The following week, they go to Cincinnati, and they will not beat the Bearcats. Cincinnati is going to beat Baylor.
God. I like that. Wow. Bold. Okay. Easier question. Which two teams play for the conference title? Robert, I'll let you go first on this one.
I'm gonna go Utah and Iowa State.
Okay, we're gonna have a.
This one's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be very different. Doug, who do you have in the conference title game for the Big 12?
I'm gonna pull the tiebreakers.
Oh boy,
we're getting deep into the weeds.
It's gonna come down to that. And Utah's my darling team. And I think Utah is going to play. Utah's going to play Arizona State.
Okay. A little bit of divergence here. I'm going to do a little bit divergence. I like Utah or Arizona State, as I said. I'm going to go off the board. I'm going to have them playing TCU. I believe in it. Okay. As you look at the odds here at the bottom here, any value, I obviously have made my case that I feel strongly that Arizona State apply plus 550. I consider Duck to be a much better, boy, that didn't work out, a much better futures player, let's say, than myself. But I really like Arizona State catching that much. This is a tough conference, but I think they're nationally good. So that's my opinion where I see value. Robert, you see any value here on the bottom line here?
Obviously, I'll put the point that if there is some book somewhere that has Utah at some ridiculous price, obviously grab that. But I don't think you're going to get that number anymore. I like Iowa State. I like Iowa State at 11-1. I think I got it a little earlier at like 14-1. I kind of like that. And I don't hate Kansas at 16-1. But I think I like the Iowa State a lot better at 11-1. I think if you're looking for a more, and even TCU a little bit there, but I'll be different, go with Iowa State. Like, I trust Matt Campbell over Aranda, over Texas Tech, and over Kleiman there at Kansas State. I trust him more than those coaches. So that's why I put that there.
Okay. And Duck, wrapping up your first preview on the Sharpest College Football Podcast of 2025. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think our next one is going to be the Sun Belt out in a few days, although this one might be out a little later than expected with some technical difficulties. Duck, we will see you in about a week and a half or so. We're trying to figure out our next one that you'll be on, but looking forward to it. This was awesome. This was very much in depth. This is exactly what the people who are still with us love to listen to, so we appreciate it. Duck, we will see you before too long. Robert, I will see you very shortly. Everybody that's still with us, thank you so much, and we will see you again soon.
See you, everybody.